Alrighty, just give me 1 sec. And then we will get into this. My god, they're making me log into Twitch again. It's gonna do this every time I stream. It's annoying because it's actually it actually was logged in for a second and then it logged me out. I'm not gonna be able to see any posts in chat for a second. So weird. Oh, we're good. So weird. Yo, what's up? What's up, Jake? Was it showing something weird while I was fixing that or no? All right, I have to do 2 more things and then we'll start. No, oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were saying that like sarcastically or being weird. It is kind of weird doing these recap streams way after the fact, but I wanted like the complete collection done before the new season, so it had to be done for my OCD sakes, I guess. All right, 1 more thing and then we'll get started. Oops. Enter key on this keyboard keeps messing me up. Looks like YouTube is what I just wrote to. Is what I just wrote in the Fantasy Distractions Discord. Whoops. Okay. All right. I think we're good. I think we're good to go. All good, Jake. All right. So yeah. So final main Fantasy Distraction recap stream before the new season. We're probably going to do a recap stream next week. I might see if I could start earlier than I normally do, and we'll do all of the fantasy shorts. So all 25 of the fantasy shorts in one stream, I think. Those are shorter. It depends on like how much time I have to spend talking about them, I guess, but we should be able to do all of them in one sitting, I think. So I'm going to try to do that. If it seems like it's going to take too long, maybe we'll break them up into like 2 weeks. But I would like to do a recap for those as well. So we'll probably end up doing that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. I've been writing season 2 not nearly as consistent as I was hoping. I was hoping to get one story done a day in April, which would have been a lot. I kind of figured it'd be a lot, but I started off really good. I wrote a story every day for like the first 4 days of April, and then I really fell off. But since then, I've written 2, so I'm really behind as far as where I wanted to be. But overall, I'm still really ahead. Like the next one I have to write is gonna air on June 30th, so technically I'm like almost 2 months ahead of schedule writing wise. So that shouldn't be too bad. I think I'll be able to continue to be ahead throughout the season. The reason why I want to get like so much done ahead of time is that if I want to have other people besides myself recording on the episodes, I want enough time to get that done instead of be scrambling like we did in the first season to get some stories out and recorded. So at least this way, if I'm always like, a month or 2 months ahead or however many months ahead, I could always be like, all right, I know who I want to record this. So let me get it to them. And then that way they have like literal months to get back to me. So like the hardest part is really just going to be at the beginning. Unless I really fall off writing wise, but the hardest part should just be at the beginning because I need people to send me recordings and stuff between now and May 19th, right? So should be fine. Writing wise, I'm ahead, but I'm not as ahead as I would like. Recording wise, also not really as ahead as I would like, but I'm doing it in a way where a lot of the stories can go either way. Like if I could get people to record the lines that I want them to record, cool. But if not, it's set up in a way where I could still just narrate it and record it myself if I need to. So obviously I'd like to have more people involved if I can do that. But in the event that I cannot, I have a backup plan this time. Not that I never had one in season 1. It was just that like sometimes I was writing the stories the week they were supposed to come out and then giving the lines to people like 3 days before it was supposed to come out and then trying to get the lines the day before it was going to come out and then put the fantasy distraction together the night before it was going to come out. So yeah, it was a mess. But I'm already starting to look for like background music. I'm hoping to have the other thumbnail I have the Coinbox Tees guys working on done before the new season starts, so I have more options there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear my niece yelling outside of my room right now, but yeah, let's watch the first one and then we'll talk about it and get this rolling. I don't think I'm gonna do what I did last time. Last time we did the recap and then I ended stream and then I started stream again and we just played video games. I think I'm just gonna stream the recap and that'll be it tonight. I did a lot of streaming this week and it started off really good and then it kind of fell off towards the end of the week. So so I don't like burn myself out mentally and physically. We'll just do the fantasy distraction recap, however long that takes. As soon as it's done, that'll be it for tonight. And then don't think I'm going to stream over the weekend. I think we will be back Monday, and I think I'm going to do a writing stream on Monday as well. I really want to revisit that like choose your own adventure kind of idea that I had for the stream. So hopefully we could get a lot of people to come participate in that. When I used to do the RPG Maker streams, we used to do those every Monday night, and we had a lot of fun with those. So I'm hoping that we could kind of rekindle that this Monday, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, the first one we're going to be doing is Orion Journey Abroad, which is probably one of the lesser viewed main fantasy distractions, when we got towards the end of like the series, like towards the last 10, I stopped running ads on every fantasy distraction. So this is one of the ones I didn't run an ad on and only got like 58 views or something like that. And it's a story that honestly, like, when I was starting to write the season 2 stuff, I kind of forgot about. And now that I'm rewriting the season 2 stuff, I'm going to try to incorporate it a little better. But it's basically in fantasy distraction number 9, when Rima becomes Rima, she summons her guardian slash protector at the time, Orion, to go fetch something for her from the main continent. And he ends up on Fenrir around like the recruitment time of the wars. And he's kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time and essentially gets recruited into the Onyx army. So it's kind of a big deal because he's a pretty strong fighter. And I ended up just, when I was starting to write the audio play stuff that we ended up scrapping for now, I completely forgot about him until halfway through when I was writing it, and I added him in somewhere else. But I think I will probably bring him in a little sooner on the Onyx side. I just don't know in what capacity yet. But yeah, so this is his story. This is kind of how he ends up on Fenrir. And yeah, we'll play it and then we'll talk about it. Orion had been chosen to be Princess Rima's keeper almost since the day she was born. His arrival in the kingdom of Sabia was a mystery, and one that even Orion himself could not explain. One day he woke up, face buried in the sand, and no explanation as to why he would be there. It was as if he was transported from another world, another dimension, or another time. The kingdom of Sabia was as foreign to him as was the rest of Fenrir. Wondering how he didn't die to begin with, Orion wandered through the desert in search of food and water. Instead, he heard a commotion. The king of Sabia was caught off guard by a monstrous scorpion in the desert. Orion acted on instinct, rushing in to save the king and his caravan. After getting to know Orion, his capabilities, and the honorable man that he was, the king and queen assigned him as Rima's keeper. The word keeper had many meanings to the royalty in Sabia, but most importantly it meant Orion was Princess Rima's protector and guardian. He escorted Rima any time she left the castle, and hardly left her side when she was in it. One day, Orion did leave to get Princess Rima a gift from the markets of Sabia, while Rima's own parents conspired against her. They felt she was unfit to rule the kingdom, and a few days later they locked Orion in a prison cell while they carried out the most heinous act imaginable. The king and queen murdered their own daughter by burying her alive. But something about the process triggered the gift that Orion brought Rima from the markets. It was a sand-colored pendant with the word Queen written upon it. The gift raised Rima from the dead mere hours after her parents' betrayal, and shortly after, the kingdom of Sabia would bow to their new queen. After freeing Orion from the cells, she tasked him with going to the mainlands of Fenrir to search for an item of great power that will help her rule not only Sabia, but anywhere else on Fenrir that dares to bring Sabia harm. Orion heard of a group of pirates traveling across the Fen Seas, and hitched a ride to the mainland. When he arrived, the state of the mainlands of Fenrir was not what he expected. The pirates dropped him off in Vesuva, which was a melting pot of sorts according to the rumors that reached Sabia. But you can imagine the confusion when Orion found the town rather quiet. Orion and Rima did their research, and to be fair, they both had immense interest in the mainland's affairs long before Rima became the queen. This knowledge made Orion's first big destination clear: the town of Vorpal. Vorpal was said to be the main hub of information that circulates around Fenrir. If there was an item of great value and power, then surely someone there must know where it is. Vesuva was just a taste of what was to come. Orion walked the desolate streets of Vorpal, once bustling with children playing, citizens working hard, and street vendors akin to the markets in Sabia. What he expected to be a town full of life was now the closest he had seen to a ghost town. The few people he saw were elderly, and the occasional child ran from one home to another. They all seemed to be in a rush to leave Vorpal. What happened here? Orion asked an older man carrying bags toward Vorpal's exit. New to Fenrir, I gather. The old man adjusted one of the bags hanging off his shoulder. Orion offered to help him to the exit, a gesture the elderly man accepted. A few days ago, King Ingvar and Lord Kazai visited Vorpal. It was the day of the Morska festival, the most important day here in Vorpal. They recruited every able body here to their war, despite Vorpal being a neutral town. That would explain the emptiness, Orion thought as he finished helping the man get out of town. Where will you go? He asked one last question. As far south as I can go without hitting the Deadlands, the old man replied. He nodded to Orion for the assistance, then left through the gates. King Ingvar and Lord Kazai's tales reached everywhere on Fenrir, so the names weren't foreign to Orion. In fact, Rima had always been fascinated with their confrontation on the top of Mount Shair. The battle that shook the world, they called it, even in Sabia. King Ingvar, the self-proclaimed God King. Lord Kazai, the man who cannot die. These two are legends on Fenrir, and their stories reached far and wide. Orion always wondered if said stories were fabricated in an effort to promote the inevitable war. Who wouldn't want to fight for the God King? Who wouldn't want to stand beside a man who could never be cut down? Though he had the thoughts, he wouldn't dare say it to Rima. In her youth, she loved to talk about them both. A funny way to put it now. Rima's youth abruptly ended, and the queen that emerged from the grave her parents made for her cared less about the stories and more about how to protect Sabia from Ingvar and Kazai. Two people she revered as gods amongst men, as did most Fenins. She now saw as threats to her kingdom, and given her newfound power since her resurrection, it would be in Ingvar and Kazai's best interest to return the sentiment. Orion would serve Rima to his last breath, but even he wasn't sure what Rima had become. Before leaving Sabia, he tried to find the merchant who sold him the pendant that made Rima what she is now, but he couldn't find him. He just wanted answers so he could help Rima navigate her new power. Those answers wouldn't come. At least while Orion is on another continent, he wouldn't have to worry about Rima's safety. The queen could take care of herself now. Orion searched the bars and inns in Vorpal for people that could have information. He entered a bar-inn hybrid known as the Sea Tides. The place was empty, but left in fairly good condition. The recruitment process must have been recent and carried out swiftly. There didn't seem to be many signs of resistance. Suddenly, Orion heard metal clanging outside the walls of the Sea Tides. How could he have missed knights in the town? He rested his hand on the handle of his sword as the doors opened. In walked a few Onyx soldiers, Lord Kazai's men. And to Orion's further surprise, Lord Kazai himself emerged from the doorway. We've returned to help the elderly and children find safe places to stay either outside the walls of war or within the safety of Onyx. Are you lost, friend? With Kazai there, Orion knew he stood no chance if he decided to fight. He could take down the Onyx soldiers, but Kazai's katana, Rednefed, was said to be able to block any attack. I'm looking for the Temple of Baruva, Orion replied. Any idea where I can find it? Lord Kazai crossed his arms, and the look of concern on his face worried Orion. That's right in the middle of Obsidian's territories, I'm afraid, said the ruler of Onyx. Might be a bit of a challenge, but we could get you there. If I fight in your war, said Orion, hesitantly. Whether you fight beside me or not, you'll have to fight your way to the temple. Ingvar won't let you get there without resistance, explained Kazai. You're both still recruiting, it looks like. If I can get in and out of Baruva before the war begins, then it shouldn't be a problem. Orion thought his logic made sense, but the Onyx soldiers in attendance laughed at his response. Lord Kazai found the statement less amusing. Judging by your garb, I came to the conclusion you're not from this continent, said Kazai. Forpal was the last stop for us both. The war has already begun. All right. That one, like, writing wise, I'm pretty satisfied with that one. Obviously, like, I'm never happy with, I hate hearing my own voice. So anytime I hear my own narration, I'm just like, I'm never satisfied. I always find things wrong with it. I'm never happy. Even till today, I've recorded something today, and after I recorded it, I was like, I was okay with it, like it was good, but like, I just hate hearing my own voice. So, but writing wise, I like it, you know. And I know we hype up Ingvar and Kazai a lot in these stories and kind of repeat a lot of the same stuff when it comes to hyping them up, but it doesn't make it any less like fascinating or cool to me. I still like all the Kazai and Ingvar stuff, like the way people refer to them, and you know how people that aren't even like on the continent know about them, and their legend stretches like far and wide. It's good stuff. I just gotta figure out how to use Orion better in the wartime stuff, because obviously he's just trying to get to the Temple of Baruva, but Kazai explains to him it's kind of like smack in the middle of Obsidian territories, and since the war already started, it ain't happening. He ain't getting there. Not without a fight, at least. So joining Kazai actually makes a lot of sense for him in order to get to where he needs to get. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty good one though. I actually am very happy with that. Orion, I probably will never ever mention this again, because I was all like, I'm never gonna tell people this. It's gonna be like an Easter egg or a secret. But the Orion character is actually a character that was meant to appear in the second book of A Soldier's Crest. Excuse me. And yeah, so he's actually he's in the second book of A Soldier's Crest. Like I wrote that book already, even though I never released it, and I'm not gonna change that. So when he mysteriously appears on Sabia, and it seems as if he's been transported from another time and place, he's actually the same character from my book series, A Soldier's Crest. So there's a little Easter egg interconnection overlapping thing for anyone who stumbles across this video in the future, if I ever release that second book and or Fantasy Distractions ever becomes bigger than it is. But yeah. All right. So the whole I kind of hate hearing my own voice issue is going to be a big issue in this stream, because towards the end of Fantasy Distractions, like especially these last 10, I read most of them because we were kind of scrambling to finish, but I also knew the 50th episode was going to have everybody in it, so or almost everybody in it. So I had to record a lot myself because I didn't want to put too much pressure on everybody. Actually, I think I read most of them. 41 was me, obviously, that's the one we just watched. 42 is me. 43 is me. 44 is Mike, I believe. 45 is me. 46 is me. 47 is Derpy and Zaff. 48, I think, is just Janine. I might have like one or two lines in there. I'm pretty sure it's just Janine. 49 is me and Janine. And then 50 is like everybody except Sasselia. I think for some reason Sasselia, I didn't put any of Saselia's characters in that. I don't know how, with like Anna basically being like one of the main characters of season 2, but I'm pretty sure Sass has no words in there. I do not speak anything but English. So if you want to retype that in English, I can answer whatever you said, but hello. But yeah. So that one's that. The next one is Angelica. Oh my god, I'm doing this again where I accidentally click back. I did that last stream. I've never done that before, I swear, but now I'm doing it like every time. Okay, wait. All right. Yeah, if you want to retype that in English, I can answer you. Otherwise, I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're typing. But we're gonna watch this next one, and then we'll talk about it. This one is also voiced by me. It's gonna be a lot of me tonight, but the ones that are in me are like, you know, pretty crazy ones. So not that the ones that I read are bad, but like I said, I don't care for my voice as much. All right, I'll be right back. We'll watch this, then we'll talk about it. The war between King Ingvar's Obsidian army and Lord Kazai's Onyx army is on the horizon. Lord Kazai's biggest advantage is that ever since he entered the Onyx army, he was surrounded by leaders. His rule was inevitable, and with his experience came near endless knowledge when it came to wartime strategy. Perfectly crafted plans and narrowing the landscape to ensure Onyx has more advantageous fights will be key to Lord Kazai defeating King Ingvar. As for King Ingvar, he plans to win the war in the same way he does all things: brute force. The amount of people in King Ingvar's army dwarfs Lord Kazai's to the point where Ingvar could potentially attack multiple parts of Onyx and have knights left over. On top of that, Ingvar was one of the biggest and meanest fighters on Fenrir, and had been for years. Everyone who knew of the Obsidian army, even before Ingvar was king, knew that he was a major threat not to be trifled with. The self-proclaimed God King's reign of terror began shortly after the battle he had with Lord Kazai on the top of Mount Shair. In Genin, he denounced Enror, the wolf god of war and battle, declaring himself the new god. If you were of similar mind to the God King, then there was no question what side of this war you wanted to be on. This spelled trouble for Lord Kazai as some of the strongest fighters on Fenrir began to flock to King Ingvar. All these warriors, comfortable with shedding blood and taking lives, was not enough for King Ingvar. He wanted more, needed more. He wanted to make sure that when the war started, he would bury his rival once and for all. Time was running out, and the stage was set for the big Obsidian Onyx War, so if Ingvar wanted to extend his ranks, then he had to act quickly. He traveled with some members of his army from town to town in search of warriors. Despite being the one to welcome new recruits, King Ingvar traveled with Dita, a woman he had grown to respect in important war matters such as these. Filling his army with men and women like him meant a lack of finesse when dealing with locals. A void that Dita filled easily with her kind personality. As they traveled from place to place in Obsidian, they heard many rumors of warriors they had missed in their original recruitment process. The first stop was a lesser-known area southwest of Triton, an easy-to-miss location for sure, and supposedly a home for sellswords. When King Ingvar and his knights arrived, they found small huts used as homes, but no people to be found. The belongings remained, but it looked as if they hadn't been touched for weeks. All of the people had gone, but to where? King Ingvar didn't have time to search for these people, nor did he have the patience, so they went to the next place Dita heard rumors about. A similar spot was just north of Reddick, a small nameless village Ingvar didn't even know existed. Dita had heard that a man living there named Innocent was similar in fighting style to the Onyx Samurai, but a savage fighter, one that King Ingvar himself would absolutely respect. They were told he wore a necklace of the wolf god Enror, but much like Ingvar himself, he had disrespected the god of war in battle. He marked the eyes of the beast on the necklace to show his distaste for Enror's apparent abandoning of Obsidian's people. It didn't take long for Dita to gain the information that Innocent had been given a job to hunt a monster. Ironically, this job took Innocent back to where Ingvar's first step as king began. It took him to Genin. Returning to the town formerly known for worshipping Enror, Ingvar and his army noticed that the people there had rebuilt the town, only to have it ravaged again. The town was quiet and empty when they got there. Trails of blood stained the ground from building to building, but the most concerning part was that some of the buildings were reduced to rubble, and one particular building far in the back was missing a huge piece. It didn't look like the building had been broken or began to fall apart from the assault. It looked as if something had taken a bite out of it. King Ingvar and his army approached the building. His warriors were at the ready, but Ingvar signaled for them to hold their ground. A fresh trail of blood covered the steps in front of him as he walked up them and entered the building, alone. Inside was a similar display as outside, with tables and walls torn asunder. Men and women were on the floor dead and covered in their own blood. One man was missing the entire top half of his body with a similar bite mark as the building. As King Ingvar entered the room, he passed by the body of a woman who was fleeing for her life. She was frozen in place by ice, her statuesque body on display, a warning from the monster that did this. Warnings, however, are for those who can feel fear, an emotion Ingvar can say he's never experienced. The God King walked slowly through the room, admiring the work of the monster. His hand rested comfortably on the handle of his katana, Cold Knight, an appropriate name for a weapon in his current circumstance. He moved his head from side to side, cracking his neck as he entered, preparing himself for a fight. In the final room of the building, he found something unexpected. A woman. Her skin was like the ice around them. Her hair was long and blue with a greenish tint. She held a wolf necklace in the palm of her right hand and picked at it with nails on her left. "It took you long enough," she said, each word accompanied by cold air escaping her lips. King Ingvar was known for being rather hot-blooded, but even he felt a slight chill in the air. "Did you receive my gifts?" "Dead men I intended to recruit," scoffed the God King. "Men unworthy of your army," replied the woman. "I saved you some time." King Ingvar crossed his arms as he no longer saw a reason to prepare for battle. "What did you expect to gain from this demonstration? A place beside me?" With a snap of her fingers, a throne of ice appeared behind Ingvar and slid to his legs, forcing him to sit down. The woman walked slowly over to him. "Have you ever heard the tale of Wince? How about the gift of Anara?" Before King Ingvar could answer, the woman continued. "Many years ago, a prophet named Wince summoned the 4 gods to Baruva. There, he tricked the gods into giving pieces of themselves as tribute to Anara. Giving a piece meant receiving something glorious in return, but therein lies the trick. The gods received nothing in return, and poor Wince became the victim of the witch goddess Aradia." "A children's fable," said Ingvar, surprisingly comfortable in his new frozen throne. "Get to the point." "Some were found and some were slain," she continued. "Some were never seen. Red and white were stabbed by green, and one appeared in Fate's reign." The town of Fate does seem to be rather relevant in that story. They say a woman appeared during a rainstorm on the outskirts of Fate, as if she rose up from the fen seas like the mermaid goddess herself. "And I'm supposed to believe you're the one in the story? What a joke." King Ingvar stood, and the ice throne crumbled immediately. When Ingvar looked down at it, the woman vanished into mist and emerged from the ice that was now on the floor. When she fully reformed, she bent the knee to the God King. "If you want the real throne, a solitary throne, one that means you are the one true ruler of all of Fenrir," the Ice Woman looked up at Ingvar, "you need me." Alrighty. Yeah, so there's a lot in this story too that I don't think a lot of people sorry, I'm flipping a paper over. I don't think a lot of people have listened to this one as much either, but there's a lot that goes down in this one that's pretty interesting. Like, I don't just like outright say that she is what she is, but she's essentially like the creature that is created from the scale of the mermaid goddess, and where like Aradia gets Regit, who we heard about in the last set that we recapped. This was kind of like Morska's equivalent, and Angelica kind of is like a mini version of Morska, but obviously she can control like ice and stuff, whereas like Morska was really just like mist and water, and she could transform and grow really big and stuff like that. Angelica's kind of like not nearly as powerful as Morska, because Morska's like an actual god, but she like power wise, she has like a larger range, I guess. So she has a dragon form, and that's where the bites in the building come from. And she's loyal to Ingvar, which is kind of funny that she's so obsessed with Ingvar, because like the monsters that are created from the gods and goddesses, like Regit is strictly like a puppet for Aradia. Like Aradia has full control over him, but the other creatures created from the gods and goddesses are not necessarily like controlled by them or loyal to them or have to follow them or anything like that. So Angelica can kind of do like whatever she wants, and it's funny that she chooses to follow Ingvar, because Ingvar's whole thing is that he's trying to do away with like the past history that he feels is holding Fenrir back, which is, in other words, like all the stuff with the gods and goddesses. Like that's why he kind of like the first thing he does is denounce Enror, which I know this story isn't in Enror's favor, because they're talking about like the guy Ingvar's originally looking for is like hating on Enror, and Ingvar hates him. But I am wearing an Enror t-shirt. We do have merchandise. It's relevant because Enror was mentioned in that story, but we do have merchandise, so !merch, or if you're on YouTube, I put the description with the link to our merch in every video, I'm pretty sure. So if you want to get this cool Enror shirt, you can. There's a Morska shirt, there's an Aradia shirt, there's an Anna shirt. Is that it? What other shirts do we have? I think that's it. We have one of King Ingvar lifting weights too. It's called Obsidian Gym, but definitely go check out the merch if you haven't. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. There's a lot of little like hints and Easter eggy things in there. There's a mention again of the Baruva stuff, which wasn't mentioned since like Fantasy Distraction like 14 or 24 or something. So Liv is saying uncle at the TV. That's adorable. Are you guys upstairs? I thought I heard her like still down here. Unless maybe she went up. I thought I still heard her like a second ago. But yeah, so a lot of little hints and things of what's to come in this one. Not necessarily for season 2, but just like general fantasy distractions foreshadowing, I guess. All right, so 43 is also me. It's just a lot of me in this final 10, but she wanted to come say goodnight to you. I told her you're on the TV. Good night, Liv. I love you. See you tomorrow. We'll play tomorrow. Yeah. I feel bad that she wanted to come say goodnight to me. I said goodnight to her before I came in the room, so. But good night, Liv. Get some sleep. Night night. All right, we're gonna watch the next one. I won't be on the screen anymore for the next couple of minutes, but we need more in the sun. There's more coming in this set of 10 because that character is in the second to last fantasy distraction in the first season. So we will actually have that tonight, a little later. I think it's 49. We're on 43 right now. But I won't be on the screen at the moment, but this will have my voice. So we're going to watch this and then we'll talk about it. BRB. I imagine life on other planets is fragile, fleeting. On Fenrir, it's similar, but much worse. Life is precious and way too short. Every day is just another step toward your grave. Now that war has come for Fenrir, your life can be gone in an instant, and most Fenins won't remember your name. A lot of people talk about the battle on the top of Mount Shair. It's called the battle that shook the world for a reason. A legendary confrontation between Ingvar and Kazai before they were rulers, before they would spark the war that would change everything. Those two will never die, because even when their bodies return to Fenrir's soil, their names will be cemented in Fenrir's history. Do you know what people never talk about, though? What happened to the top of Mount Shair after the battle? What came next? Truth be told, the aftermath of the battle between Ingvar and Kazai left the mountain even more unstable than Fenrir. Many people tried to go up there, just to touch their feet on the same ground as those two legends. But there was some type of magical barrier preventing people from going to the top. The first few to try were called delusional, that it might just have been too thick of air for them to handle. Remember, people consider Ingvar and Kazai godlike. If any Fenins could breathe all the way up that mountain, then it would be those two. As rumors spread about the top of Mount Shair being unreachable, other Fenins were quick to take on the challenge. They all returned with similar stories, and each time they became more and more ridiculous. One Fenin said that they hit a magical ceiling that wouldn't let them continue. Another said there were arrows that shot out from the mountain and almost knocked them off. One even claimed he heard a deep, mystical voice that warned him if he went further, he would die. The more crazy these stories got, the more they piqued my interest. One day while I was working in my shop, I overheard some people in the town square talking about people gathering at the base of the mountain. I closed up early and headed out there to see what the commotion was about. When I got there, I saw numerous male and female Fenins stretching and preparing themselves. At this point in time, only a single Fenin would attempt going up the mountain at a time. Stories never mention a group of Fenins. I assumed that was the plan here. I waited at the base. I had no interest in going up myself, but I was curious if they could do it. I introduced myself to some of them. If they were to succeed, I would have liked to be a small part of their journey. I offered to get them supplies if they forgot anything, and offered some words of wisdom. I didn't have much experience when it came to climbing legendary mountains, of course, but I considered myself in decent shape and provided some tips on surviving the trek up. After a few moments, they began to go up the mountain. At the start of the mountain was a trail, so it was enough to get you started. Who knows what it was like after that? The stories were all different, but most didn't even mention a trail, so I would assume at some point there isn't one anymore. I spent a good portion of my afternoon there waiting for them to return, and after a few hours they did. I tried to count how many there were when they got back because it looked like there were less of them. A solid observation on my part because it was the case. 2 of them didn't return. The ones who did were covered in sweat, and the less fortunate ones had scrapes, bruises, and blood. They all were helping each other walk and stand. The emotional journey they had been on took its toll, and when I asked what happened or what went wrong, they could not find the words. I had brought a bag with me, unsure of how long I would be there. Took a drink out of it and handed it to one of the Fenins who went up. "Take your time," I said, "but when you have the strength, I would love to know what happened up there." The Fenin took a long drink and said, When we got to the top, we heard a Fenin screaming, he began. Then we heard fighting and monsters roaring. I heard the roar of a dragon, another of the Fenins who went up spoke. No, that had to be a demon, said another. The footsteps of another person arriving on the trail behind me startled some of the Fenins who went up for a moment. We all turned to the dirt path leading to the base of the mountain. An old man carrying a bag walked up to us and placed it on the ground. I'm afraid you missed all the action, friend, I said. These are the brave souls that attempted the journey up Mount Shair today. Can't say I'm here for them, said the old man. I was told by my friend to come back in 3 days. As if the old man judged the timing down to the second, a large roar from the top of the mountain made its way all the way to the base, and all of us took a step back except the old man. Wind swept across the mountain base around us. The old man grabbed my wrist, since I was closest to him, to steady himself, but it actually felt like he steadied me instead. The battle between King Ingvar and Lord Kazai on the top of Mount Shair may have shook the world, but whatever just transpired up there now brought the world, at least my world in this moment, to a complete stop. The wind stopped to the point where the air around us felt still. We stood for what felt like forever in the most eerie, dreadful silence. Then a man made his way down the trail connected to the mountain. He had no shirt on and long red baggy pants. He was wearing no shoes on his feet. His long black hair was slick with sweat, and his forehead was covered in both dry and fresh blood. One of his eyes was closed with 3 slash marks as scars that went from his brow through to his cheek. There were markings on his torso that extended to his arms and neck. At first I thought they were tattoos, but it became clearer that whatever happened to him on the top of the mountain made these new designs on his body. The last thing I noticed about him was a weapon in his hand, a katana with a fine crimson red blade, its handle a golden dragon. Who are you? I found the courage to ask. The old man let go of my wrist and made his way over to the one who came down from the mountain. King Ingvar and Lord Kazai, 2 legends praised as if they were gods. The old man turned to face us and took a deep breath. Praise those false gods no longer, those who bring war and destruction to our beautiful lands here on Fenrir. Instead, turn your attention here. Take up arms and defend the land which Jakari the elf god blessed us with. Stand beside your savior and take back what is yours. Stand beside Jiru, the dragon of Mount Shair. Alrighty. Yeah, so the Jiru stuff also I need to flesh out a bit more in season 2 when I was doing the original like audio play stuff we were writing. I had plans for him, but I feel like he needs to be included a bit more. Because he's kind of like one of the first real like stories that kind of wraps up in favor of Jakari. I feel like a lot of people just don't like Jakari, even though he's the god that actually created everybody on this planet. But like nobody likes him or worships him really. We have one fantasy short where it's like takes place during like their version of like the Morska festival, but for Jakari. And even that, like on the scale in which they love Morska during her festival and like praise her and celebrate her and stuff, it's like it's almost like a Renaissance fair. It's almost like a joke how they celebrate Jakari versus Morska and them. So, but you know, like at the tail end of the story, it's like, oh, you know, like we need to protect this land that Jakari made for us and you know, basically gave to us, blessed us with. So, here's the guy who's gonna help you do that. And Jiru's whole thing is like he goes up to Mount Shair when nobody else can and is actually able to survive up there when the last people to do it were Ingvar and Kazai. and the aftermath is important. The weapon he has is important and will be relevant going forward. And that's I can't really talk too much about it. There's like a lot of like spoilery stuff around this one, so really hard for me to break it down without diving into that and spoiling some stuff I've planned for the future. And some season 2 stuff ties in directly to that story, so yeah, can't really do too much with that one, but still a pretty good one. I'm happy with the way it came out. I feel like my reading of stories towards the end of season 1 got a lot better. I think it'll be even better in season 2, only because I'm not in, like, obviously we moved, so I'm not in the room I was in, and the room I was in was very like long and echoey. And just like my overall reading has gotten better, and my narration and stuff. I wouldn't really even consider myself like a voice actor. Um, but I feel like my narration has got better at least, and I won't have as much like echoing and other sounds going on. I think my biggest issue is like learning where to keep my face to the microphone, because sometimes like, you know, in the ones that we've listened to tonight already, it's like a little like lip smacky. But I'm not a professional. I'm trying my best. All right. But yeah, so this one is done by Mike, who actually is a professional, and will probably sound a lot better than the ones that I read. But this is a pretty fun one. Ingvar is in it, so he gets to voice Ingvar in it, which I believe for season 2 we're not going to have Mike too much. Not as much as season 1. Like, he won't be doing full stories for us, unfortunately, but it's mostly just because he's like busy and has, you know, priorities that are way more important than fantasy distractions right now, which I totally understand and get. But he is going to continue to voice King Ingvar for us in the second season. So if there are stories that have Ingvar talking in them, which there will be because season 2 takes place during the war between Ingvar and Kazai and Onyx and Obsidian. So there will be a lot of key moments with Ingvar, but Mike is going to continue to at least voice Ingvar for us. So I'm really excited about that and happy about that because Ingvar's voice is basically Mike's voice to me at this point, or at least Mike's voice for him, I should say. So yeah, excited about that, and you'll get a little taste of that in this one. It isn't really Ingvar center. Well, it's Ingvar focused, but Ingvar doesn't have a ton of lines in it. But Mike does narrate the whole thing, so it's a pretty good one. It's a little bit on the longer side compared to some of our other fantasy distractions, but it's a good one. All right, let's listen to that and then we'll talk about it. Just one more thing about Jiru, like there wasn't really too much I could do to talk and break that one down because, like I said, it's very spoilery. So just know that all of that setup in the Jiru story is important and will be relevant in, I won't say the near future, but in the future. All right, let's listen to this one and then we'll talk about it.
Alicia is, in every way of the word, a defender. I'm sure you've heard the tale of how King Ingvar walked into Genin and declared his godhood. If you ask Obsidian Knights, he truly has become the God King. Genin, the town where he denounced the wolf god Enror, was not King Ingvar's only stop that day. Shortly after, he made his way over to the next town, a town called Aular. It's not that Genin welcomed King Ingvar with open arms, but rather, Genin was not a town full of warriors, so they stood no chance against the Obsidian army. Aular was as close as Fenrir got to a barbarian town. Warriors from all parts of the world gathered to live there. The idea of a new king one claiming himself the god of war and battle, didn't sit well with the people of Aular. King Ingvar was not welcomed with open arms. He wasn't welcomed at all. As King Ingvar entered the town and claimed himself their new ruler, many people gathered in the town square with their weapons at the ready. King Ingvar told them they would benefit from joining his cause, that his army was about to change the world, much like the battle on top of Mount Shire did. The people of Aular were not impressed. They shouted at Ingvar and his army and cursed the king's name. In true Ingvar fashion, the king just stood there unfazed by their words. His army was behind him, so perhaps that's what made him so confident. But knowing what I know now about King Ingvar, I think he just knew the truth. It didn't matter that this was an entire town of barbarian-like warriors. King Ingvar knew none of them could touch him in battle. Everyone there could have attacked at the same time, and Ingvar would have killed them all. What made King Ingvar so powerful? On the surface, he was just a normal Finnin like the rest of us. He wielded a katana said to cut through anything, the perfectly crafted Cold Knight. Lord Kazai had a blade that could block any attack, so if he were standing there instead, it would have made more sense. King Ingvar wasn't protected by anything other than his knights. Why then could he stand there so confident in his invincibility? If someone cut him, would he not bleed? Despite living in Aular, I wasn't much of a fighter, so I chose to stay far back as my neighbors gathered in the square to stand against Ingvar. That's when a lot of my questions were answered. Our new king didn't say a word. He just stood there, letting the people of Aular get their frustrations out. However, as I previously said, the people of Aular were different. They weren't the pushovers from Genin, or Finnins made of a softer mold, as many in Obsidian refer to those from Onyx. It was as if King Ingvar stood in a town full of mirrors. The people of Aular were very similar to the new God King, and much like him, they weren't going to back down from a fight. I continued to observe as a tall woman emerged from the crowd and walked right to Ingvar, getting in his face. I knew her. She was training me to fight despite my lack of ability. Alicia, the defending warrior we called her. True to her name, she was the first to approach Ingvar in order to protect the rest of us in Aular. She challenged the new God King to a one-on-one fight. If she won, then King Ingvar would have to leave Aular alone, and leave them out of the war. If King Ingvar won, then everyone in Aular would have to join his army. Despite her best efforts to end this quickly and as peacefully as possible, this ultimatum didn't sit well with the people of Aular either, and in moments, a skirmish broke out. Alicia got pushed back in the scuffle, and Ingvar's men quickly joined the fray to defend him. Since King Ingvar was a monster of a man, and much taller than the average Finnin, I could see his massive arm rise up from within the people fighting, Cold Night shining as the sun touched it. "Enough!" he roared. The loud boom of his voice brought the commotion to a sudden stop. The Obsidian Knights fell back behind him, and the people of Aular stood across. "If you think yourself worthy to be king, worthy enough to slay a god, then fight me." Ingvar brought Cold Night down to draw a line in the sand. At first, the barbarians of Aular approached Ingvar one by one. He played with them like an infant plays with their food. The Obsidian Knights and people of Aular formed a small circle around the fights as King Ingvar put on a display unlike any seen in Fenrir before. 2 wasn't enough, so then they started sending 3, then 4 at a time, then 5, and so on and so on. until it was becoming more and more apparent to the people of Aular that there was no defeating King Ingvar in battle. It didn't matter how many they sent. You could understand how a town full of barbarians could grow to respect a man such as this. Not everyone would feel the same sentiment. Alicia could not stand beside Ingvar and his methods. She was a warrior, and she knew the town she chose to live in. But a ruler acting like this would lead to Fenrir's downfall, she thought. That night, after a commotion had stopped and King Ingvar left with his recruits, Alicia came to me. She had her gear on that she would normally wear for our training sessions, and she prepared a bag for travel. She asked me to do the same. Alicia helped me and my family for years. She was always kind to me and always kept me safe. She didn't need me to fight this battle with her. She just needed me to be an extra pair of eyes and ears. I didn't know what she wanted to do at first, but I prepared quickly. We left that night and began to trail King Ingvar and his men. I believe she wanted to assassinate the king, though she assured me she just wanted to speak with him. We followed King Ingvar for months, staying just out of sight, just out of reach. Whatever town they stopped in, we stopped just outside it. We took turns keeping watch in case they left in the middle of the night. One day, as King Ingvar and his men were on their way to a town in order to restock on supplies and maybe get better armor, they stopped randomly on the road. This had never happened in the months we tracked them. They always went from one town to another with little to no stops. On top of that, King Ingvar and one of his men walked off to the side to have a private conversation. Opportunity like this might never present itself again. Alicia hid in the nearby bushes and let their conversation go on for a few moments before emerging. I remember watching as Alicia launched herself into the air, her sword at the ready. For me, it felt like everything was happening in slow motion as she soared. She attacked from the backside of Ingvar, the perfect opportunity to strike him while he was unaware. Maybe the gods protected Ingvar, or he truly had godlike abilities and intuition, because all in one motion, Ingvar swooped around and caught Alicia by her throat. Alicia was a tall woman, but nowhere near the size of Ingvar, so her feet dangled in the air as he choked her. He laughed and dropped her to the ground. Tracking us for months, waiting for the most opportune time to strike. And that's the best you can do? Ingvar laughed. Pathetic. You're not good for Fenrir, Alicia struggled to say as she caught her breath. I could use more people like you in my army. People with guts. Ingvar looked at the knight he was talking to briefly, then back at Alicia. Get up! You're embarrassing yourself. Alicia stood with her sword at the ready. Put that thing down. You might get hurt. I froze as Ingvar turned and looked at me as I was hiding in the bushes. Take your squire and scram. You're not going to kill us? Asked Alicia. King Ingvar walked up to Alicia and leaned forward so the tip of her sword was dangerously close to his own neck. And once again, he smiled. This time it was a bit more sadistic. No. Why would I? Where would be the fun in that? He leaned forward a bit more so the sword tip was touching his skin. Go back in the woods and try again when you're ready. It'll keep me on my toes. King Ingvar lightly pushed Alicia's sword away from him and walked off with his knight. Alicia stood there in fear, looking at her own sword. She didn't understand why Ingvar would let her get that close to him with her sword against his neck. But she understood less why she couldn't drive it through his throat. Was it fear? Was it some kind of sick type of respect? I waited as she gathered herself and put her sword away. She walked over to me and grabbed her things. "Let's go," she said. "We need a new plan."
Yo, what's up, Matt? 50 celebration stream, woohoo! That's right. I'm assuming it was the enough part that scared Stacy, because that's the only part in there that would be scary. But yeah, I love that part. Obviously, I used it in the teaser trailer for season 2, but it's very Ragnar from Vikings when he comes back after the time skip, and he like draws the line in the sand, and he's all like, "Who wants to be king?" But yeah, it's a pretty good one. Alicia also, like, a lot of these characters near the end are like wartime characters, because like even though season 1 wasn't really like officially wartime, there are a couple of stories that land within like the same time frame of the war, and like the recruiting process and all that stuff. So there's a lot of characters that need to be included in some of these stories in the wartime. Alicia is one of them. Orion, Jiru, like all these characters need to pop up throughout the stories during the wartime. So I do have some plans to write some of them into stories that will be like wartime adjacent, I guess, in this new season that I'm writing now. So that stuff is coming, and honestly, like, not rushing right into doing the writing for the second season the way we were going to with the audio play and stuff actually ended up in our favor, I think, because it gives me time to realize the mistakes that I made and flesh things out a bit better. Excuse me. And then I was planning to do before. So hopefully that all works out and everything flows good enough. But it's looking like the wartime stuff might end up being broken down into. I'm just gonna keep interrupting myself. Looks like we're gonna be breaking that down into possibly 2 more seasons instead of 1. I was originally gonna do all of the wartime stuff in 50 episodes for the second season, but the way that I've outlined it and planned it out so far, it's looking like we might need to do 2 seasons for the war. So I'm just trying to figure out like how to wrap up this season then, if it's going to be the middle of the war and not the end. So that's something that I'm currently fleshing out on the outline as well, aside from just figuring out what stories we're telling and from whose perspectives and whatnot. What I am doing is I'm doing like every 2 to 3 episodes is like a major wartime like storyline, I guess, and then everything in between is like how we did season 1, like side stories focusing on like certain characters and stuff like that. So it'll all take place during the war this time, but it'll also be structured in a way that hopefully makes sense to people that listen to everything. I don't know if it'll be as easy to follow for people that don't listen to everything, but we'll see how it goes. As of right now, I think I've done a good job of making the story still stand alone, but also progress the overall storyline. So hopefully it all works out. But Alicia is another one of those characters that where we find her in the second season is actually part of the Obsidian Army. So she actually ends up being in Ingvar's army, despite her attempts to assassinate him, essentially, and her feelings as that she doesn't feel like he's fit to rule all of Fenrir, but there is like kind of this mutual respect. Well, maybe not mutual, but she respects Ingvar a bit more, like the more she is around him and kind of interacts with him. So The reason why I said it's not mutual is like I don't think Ingvar would really like. He would like kind of respect that she's like trying to follow like her feelings towards whether or not she thinks he should rule Fenrir, but I think for the most part he's pretty laser focused on just the war and killing Kazai. So, but yeah, this next one's really dark and kind of out of left field because it takes place in Ilfor, which we don't really touch on a whole lot in this season. So yeah, it's definitely one of the darker stories we've done, but let's listen to it and then we'll talk about it. Girls were born to Ren, and 2 baby girls were born to Ren and Dana of Triton. The first of the children, Indra, was named after a woman many people believed to be a saint in the town of Triton. The Indra that their daughter got her namesake from passed away many years before Ren and Dana's time on Fenrir, but the stories of Indra were historic, legendary, and passed on from generation to generation. Despite the popularity of the person, the name was often not used to name children. Some considered it disrespectful to the saint, while others felt it would put too much pressure on the child to live up to the name. However, Dana was a woman that believed strongly in signs and fate. Having trouble deciding on the name for their first child, Ren and Dana picked a few, but couldn't agree on one. The day that Indra was born was full of complications. There were moments when Ren thought he would lose his wife during the child's birth, lose his child, or lose both. Ren feared the worst, but as if a miracle was performed by the gods and goddesses of Fenrir themselves, Indra was born healthy and Dana survived. So why did they choose the name Indra? It was actually due to a woman helping deliver the baby. A woman named Faye. When things looked their worst during the childbirth, Faye held Ren and Dana's hands for a moment to pray, and in her prayer she only mentioned one name. The name of the Saint Indra. It wasn't just this prayer that would go on to make Ren and Dana choose Faye's name for their second child. It was once again fate's interference when Faye showed up to also deliver their second child. When King Ingvar's men came to recruit members of Triton for their army, Indra was 12 and Faye was 10. Ren decided to take his family south to avoid the war entirely, planning to stop in Vorpal to restock supplies. Shortly after they arrived in Vorpal, rumors spread of Lord Kazai recruiting for the war in Vorpal and that King Ingvar was also on his way south to recruit as well. Ren sent his family to the next town over while he stayed behind to get them the supplies. Ren never joined them. On top of their father's absence and the lack of supplies they needed, the next town over from Vorpal was a town called Elmore. When Dana and the girls arrived, it was as if they entered a ghost town. Not a soul around, and buildings collapsed as if they had been burnt to the ground. Dana did not want to risk anything, so she took the girls east. She knew of one other kingdom not involved in the war, the kingdom of Ilfor. A journey east without supplies meant trouble for the 3 of them, and they almost didn't make it. Dana gave the remaining food to her children and could barely walk as they approached the gates. As she called out to the people of Ilfor, she collapsed. Indra and Faye were able to get the attention of the guards, and they were brought into Ilfor, where Dana was nursed back to health. The Knights of Ilfor and the king especially showed interest in Dana right away. The southernmost kingdom in Fenrir didn't have many visitors from the north, so the information Dana could provide was of great importance to them. Not to mention they experienced the beginning of King Ingvar and Lord Kazai's war firsthand on their travels. Dana and her children were given a place to stay, and Dana quickly found a place in the Ilfor kingdom, providing the king and his knights with information. But over time, Dana changed. She quickly became distant to her children, and after a while, Indra and Faye thought Dana had completely forgotten about them. She rarely came home, and often the children had to fend for themselves. One day, after not seeing their mother for weeks, she returned home only to give the girls the news that their father had been recruited by King Ingvar's obsidian army. The news alone was upsetting, but the mother standing before them was not what they remembered. Her eyes looked like she hadn't slept since they last saw her. She was much skinnier than they remembered, and when she hugged them, she felt cold to the touch. Indra could tell her sister was scared of their own mother, so Indra took it upon herself to question her mother's behavior and what she was really doing inside the castle. Dana danced around the question, the girls could tell, but she was saved from giving them a true answer by a knock on the door. The house never got visitors when the girls were alone, something that Indra and Faye were grateful for now given the circumstances. When the door opened, one of Ilfor's knights stood at the door. Indra and Faye had met this man in a previous encounter, shortly after Dana started working at the castle. They called him Hend, named after Henton, an old fishing town that was once Vorpal's rival and abandoned by the mermaid goddess Morska for its disloyalty to her. Indra and Faye talked to each other privately, discussing their uneasiness around Hend, and seeing him at their front door made them nervous. Hend told Dana it was time to go, and Dana smiled at the girls. She kissed them both on the forehead and left with Hend. Indra and Faye couldn't sit idly while their mother continued to work for these men in Ilfor Castle. For the next 4 days, they pretended to play in parts of Ilfor close to the castle. They monitored the nights, the rare sightings of their mother, and the even rarer sightings of the king. They picked up a lot of valuable information in the process. That not long ago, the king had turned his back on a goddess the girls had never heard of before. The daughter of Jakari and Morska, a goddess by the name of Tasfia. In doing so, Ilfor fell on tough times, but the king continued to push to make it prosperous. He even went to great lengths to rid competition they could actually compete with, like the people of Elmore, a display that Indra and Faye had seen firsthand. Despite the gossip they overheard, no information was more important than the fact that the king of Ilfor had commanded experiments on his own people being carried out in the dungeons of the castle. Fearing their mother was either being experimented on or taking part in the experiments on others, the children decided to get close to the dungeon on the 5th day. Learning the layout of the castle was something they were also working on during the 4 days beforehand. Using simple deduction, they were able to figure out which part of the castle likely had the dungeon. It was the least traveled by any of the knights, but they often saw Hend travel down a similar corridor every day. Seeing as the start of the war kept most eyes off Ilfor and 2 small children would hardly be noticed, especially as threats, it was rather easy for Indra and Faye to sneak into the castle with the knowledge they had gained in the past few days. As they made their way to the dungeon, they came to an abrupt stop when they saw the king of Ilfor and Hend talking outside the dungeon's doors. Beside them was a pile of bodies. Faye went to gasp, but Indra put her hand over her mouth to quiet her. After a few moments, the dungeon door opened. An Ilfor knight carried out another body and threw it on the pile. "Another failure?" asked Hend. "Afraid so," replied the knight. "Expected," scoffed the king. "We are trying to do the impossible. Replicating the power of a goddess isn't going to be easy. Transferring the fragmented power of Tasfia left inside these amulets isn't something we're going to figure out in a day, or month, or year. But we must figure it out before the war is over." "There is one avenue we haven't tried yet," said Hend, "but you might not like it." "Go on," said the king. "The only one who has shown promise, well, the only one to survive the experiment so far, is the woman from Triton. Clearly the gods and goddesses must favor her." Hend's words frightened the girls. Their suspicion that their mother was involved in these experiments was correct. "Not enough to transfer Tasfia's power," the king reminded him. "Yes, of course. Our research leads us to believe this woman of Triton may just be too old or just not strong enough." Hend's words forced Indra to grab Faye by the hand and go to rush out of the castle, but 2 Ilfor knights stood in their way and forced them out into the corridor. Hend turned his attention to Indra and Faye, which caused the king of Ilfor to turn his attention to them as well. "But perhaps her children are the ones we should consider using instead." Yeah. Hend continues to be right up there, like him and Grex. We didn't talk too much about Grex in the last recap stream, but we did talk about Hend. Hend and Grex are probably the least likable characters in all fantasy distractions. So, yeah, he's the worst. So, anytime he kind of pops up in a story, you know something horrible is gonna happen. So they're experimenting on interim phase. Mom, who is the wife of Ren, who Ren is going to be a really important character in the war story as well, because him and Jack kind of get paired off in Obsidian together. So it's going to be important when Ren finds out about what's happening to his family, but that's probably not going to happen for a while. The 04 stuff is kind of just like side stuff that's happening while like the main war stuff is happening, and then it'll be more relevant like once the war is over. But I also wanted to like introduce these characters, kind of sprinkle in a little bit of like what's going on over there and stuff like that. So not the most important storyline happening right now, but it's important that people are aware of what's happening so that when we're ready to bring it kind of to like the forefront of what's going on, you know, like it won't be like out of left field. So that's why we kind of do like random little L4 stuff and some of the like space stuff that we do with like Kai and stuff like that. So yeah, this is one of the, it's not like filler per se, but it's just like a story that kind of stands on its own, which is also kind of weird because like you know, we talked about Hend and them in the last set, and then we have another story coming up that actually takes place in Ilfor as well, and a story that takes place in space is coming up next. So it's weird. It's like actually we have a couple of stories that take place in space in this final 10. So like it's almost like this final 10 is setting up a lot of other stuff while also still prepping us for season 2 and the war stuff, because it's like 41 is like Kazai recruits Orion, so that's war related. 42 is Angelica basically recruits herself into Ingvar's army. That's war related. Jiru is potentially war related, but like a war adjacent. Alicia is war related because she's following Ingvar. Then we have Indra and Faye, which is disconnected from the war. The next story takes place in space. Then Ilfor. Then 2 more in space to wrap up the Starlight Samurai stuff. And then the 50th one is like the big setup for season 2. So it's like a pretty good balance, but a little more like non-war stuff than most of the sets that we've done, I guess. But still interesting stuff, hopefully, to people. To be chill. This next one's also me. Then after this one where it's just me, then it's Derpy and Zaff. Janine, I'm pretty sure it's just Janine for 48. Me and Janine for 49. And then our big finale, which was number 50 and had like everybody in it. So we're almost there as far as the recap goes, but yeah, let's just keep going, I guess. Just keep moseying along. So this one is called Dr. Callan, the Samurai and Paladin. This was actually our story that Josh from Literary Gladiators reviewed for us, which was pretty awesome. And if you don't know about Literary Gladiators on YouTube, you should go subscribe to them. And subscribe to Fantasy Distractions if you're not subscribed to us too, obviously. I'm actually writing short stories for Josh's channel for this entire year. I'm writing 2 short stories a month for him. Our first story for April just came out last week, and our second story for April comes out, I think, in about a week and a half. I think it comes out on the 27th. And those stories are very, very similarly, very similar to Fantasy Distractions. They just take place on a different planet. It's a planet called Ruma. I won't get too deep into it here, but definitely go check out the Literary Gladiators channel. if you want to see some more stories written and narrated by me. Well, let's listen to the next one here, and then we'll talk about it. Chosen for an experiment of this magnitude, you must first be worthy. Then your past history must align with the requirements of the procedure. You may be considered a good person in the eyes of many, but if you were never a physical specimen, then you would get passed on. In comparison, if you were top of your class in physical achievements and lived a life full of activities demanding of your body, but your attitude was poor and you were mean to others, then you too would be passed on. Dr. Callan was the creator of some of the Galaxy Federation's greatest medical enhancements, technological advancements, and military weaponry. The tech used in outposts across the galaxy to monitor threats and keep tabs on questionable allies was one of her creations. However, despite her achievements and accolades, none came close to Project Starlight. The body of the man who would become known as Kai was the type of specimen Callan was looking for. Still unsure exactly where he came from. The Galaxy Federation found his body frozen on a cargo ship that they confiscated. Whoever froze Kai must have done it to save his life, because Dr. Callan found some complications in his bloodstream, as well as damage done to his nervous system. Once Kai was brought in and presented to Dr. Callan, everything changed. The Galaxy Federation gave her full permission to carry out Project Starlight because if Callan was successful, it would change everything for the Galaxy Federation and the future of their operations. It was far from an easy process and took months for Callan to figure out. She had to make sure her ideas would work before they even attempted to open up the case, keeping Kai alive. When she was sure her experiment would succeed, they unfroze Kai. In order to save Kai's life, Callan had to rework almost his entire body. Dr. Callan often described it as a complete shame considering the physique Kai had before the transformation. But turning him into a cyborg was necessary. This process took Callan years to perfect, and she spent almost every minute of every day with Kai, tweaking parts of him here and there. She didn't want to mess with anything inside his head, but she had no choice. The complications within Kai's body spread to his brain, so Callan was forced to make modifications. These modifications were of the most interest to the Galaxy Federation because they realized they could then program Kai to be the ultimate soldier. Dr. Callan fought them on this at first, but the Galaxy Federation threatened to take her off the project if she didn't comply. She considered Kai to be her own child, so she did not want to be separated from him. She took every precaution to make sure the programming was safe and wouldn't harm Kai in any way. Once Kai was up and running, they began to do a lot of testing. To their surprise, he knew how to fight, but not just basic hand-to-hand combat or self-defense. Kai was possibly the greatest fighter in the universe. They had seen nothing like it. Even without the robotic parts kicking in, Kai had some of the fastest reflexes they had ever seen. He was proficient in most weapons, including artillery, but the sword was his weapon of choice. He took a liking to samurai-style katanas especially. As Project Starlight reached new heights, the Galaxy Federation felt ready to send Kai on his first mission. Callan prepared him for it and programmed what the Federation wanted, but a week before the mission, the powers that be in the Galaxy Federation took Callan off the project. She fought back against them for this. She didn't understand their reasoning for taking her off the project, but they explained that they were afraid she had become too attached to Kai, whom they had now given the name, the Starlight Samurai. Callan felt this thinking was absurd. She knew Kai the best, whether she was too attached to the project or not. For them to send him out on a single mission without her there to support would be a big mistake. Despite her best efforts, they wouldn't budge on the matter. Callan believed they wanted her off the project so they could program Kai to do their dirty work, something that Callan would disagree with and fight against them about. Months passed and Kai became what the Galaxy Federation wanted. Dr. Callan would oversee minor projects during Kai's success, but they no longer gave her the freedom she had before. Despite being their greatest doctor and scientist at this point, they refused to use her properly. As Callan heard more and more what they were using Kai to do, she could no longer stomach being associated with the Galaxy Federation. She made her way to the main offices to put in her resignation. On her way there, she saw Kai passing in the hallway. She stopped to admire her work, but noticed bruises and marks all over Kai's body. She went to approach him, but he didn't even acknowledge her presence. The Galaxy Federation must have wiped his memories, even his memories of her. This devastated Callan and reassured her that quitting the Galaxy Federation was the right thing to do. Life after working for the Galaxy Federation was strange for Dr. Callan. These projects were how she spent all of her time. She had no hobbies outside of work. She had no friends, and any family she had she didn't want to interact with. The Galaxy Federation gave her a very generous severance package, even though she was the one who chose to quit. This was probably because the Galaxy Federation wanted Dr. Callan to keep quiet about the projects she worked on while there. Despite her success, the lives she saved, and the money they gave her, Callan felt empty. She missed Kai and the process of helping him get back on his feet. Her baby had become a killer thanks to the Galaxy Federation's missions, and she wanted nothing more than to right her wrongs. A task that would be easier said than done. She used the money given to her to hire expedition crews that would work under the galaxy's radars. Keeping a low profile was easy when Callan knew all of their schedules and had to negate the effects of their tech and tracking systems. The questionable individuals that she hired for this task brought her many potential specimens, most of which she knew just by looking at them would not survive the process she put Kai through. She thought for sure she would never find a specimen that could live up to the standards that Kai set, but to her surprise they found a similar person frozen on a cargo ship, just like the one they found Kai in. This person was a female, though it appeared as if her genes were spliced with a feline of some sort. Cat ears instead of human ones, and a tail she could see through the casing used to keep her frozen, were the most notable appearance changes taken from the feline, while the rest of her looked like a normal human. Callan paid the people she hired and told them that she may no longer need their services. She ran many tests on the specimen and was shocked to see many differences between her and Kai, though the differences weren't as negative as she expected. This person had a different disease than what Kai had, and the fixes she would need to make would be minor in comparison. Due to these changes, she was able to speed up the process and unfroze the specimen way sooner than she did Kai. While Kai needed to be named, this casing had Cynthia written on the side. Waking Cynthia up was easy, though she took a bit longer to adjust to things than Kai did. In a few weeks, Callan got Cynthia situated with her new life and made modifications to her body as necessary. Nothing as severe as what she had to do for Kai, but there were still some changes that had to be made. Cynthia didn't seem to mind, she was just happy to be awake again. She told Dr. Callan all types of stories about her past, and it made Callan glad that the Galaxy Federation wasn't involved. This meant that she could leave Cynthia's memories intact, and as she remembered things she could share them. Cynthia shared many stories, but had trouble remembering her youth. She recalled a man in her life that may have been her father that would often tell her how proud he was of her, but she couldn't remember his face or his name. She recalled being in a war of some kind, and it made sense once Callan started running physical tests. Cynthia was almost as good as Kai when it came to combat. While Kai was slightly faster with his attacks and movement, Cynthia was much more agile, most likely due to the feline DNA. Dr. Callan let Cynthia do most of the sharing for the first few months of their relationship, but eventually Callan began to tell Cynthia of her son, who had gone astray, and her need to save him. Callan wasn't physically fit to do it herself, but she suggested that Cynthia might be able to help her in exchange for Callan saving her life and waking her up. Cynthia agreed to help, and Callan began to put the plans in motion to stop Kai and save him from the Galaxy Federation. All Callan wanted now was to make Cynthia into the hero Kai could have been. Alrighty. That one, there's a lot to unpack in that one because it's a lot of backstory for Kai, and then it's a lot of backstory for Cynthia, and a lot of backstory for Dr. Callan herself, and just the Galaxy Federation stuff in general. That we've also kind of sprinkled throughout Fantasy Distractions. A lot of the Galaxy Federation stuff we have done that goes even deeper is spin-off stuff. So, I don't think we'll ever do like a full season of Galaxy Federation stuff. I mean, I think we will do more stuff in space, and the Galaxy Federation will most likely be the villains in space. But I don't know if we'll really like deep dive into like their history and stuff so much as we did kind of in this one, by fleshing out a little bit of the Starlight Samurai stuff. But I do like the story. Obviously, I gotta squeeze in a cat girl somewhere. So Cynthia is a cat girl that also may or may not be from Soldier's Crest, but it's not the two you're thinking of, if you know me. Okay. All right. But yeah, that one kind of a little bit of a like side story, like spin-offy kind of thing. I'm pretty happy with the way that story came out though. Like I like the idea of this like amazing scientist slash doctor that is crucial to the Galaxy Federation and creates Kai, but because of her like own personal attachment to him, they basically like turn on her even though they kind of need her. But you know, that just goes to show you like either Galaxy Federation just has a lot of people that can fill those gaps, and on top of that, you know, they just wanted her for Kai. You know, they used her to make Kai and they're happy with Kai, so they don't really need her anymore, I guess. But you know, she doesn't give up on her ideals and her projects. And she does do some things that are a little questionable herself, but in the end, she does try to do the right thing. So we'll see. We'll see where they pop up next. Where they pop up next is very important to the future of the series, but we might not get to that in this season. I think we will probably get to that in the third season, but we're setting the stage for a lot of these Starlight Samurai-esque characters. Cynthia is the second one, and I believe the next story I'm writing for season 2 introduces another one of these type of cyborg special characters kind of floating around the galaxy. So they're not all tied to Dr. Cowan and they're not all tied to Kai, but they are all probably going to interact at some point, if not at least be relevant to the main story down the line. So kind of just introducing them now. We'll sprinkle in stories with them here and there. I'm saying sprinkled in a lot for some reason. I don't even really like sprinkles. But yeah. All right, so the next one is one that is written by Derpy, narrated and voice acted by Derpy, and also has a little bit of our buddy Zaff in there. So this was meant to be like a little more lighthearted than somewhat, because like a lot of the stuff I was writing at this time leading to the end was pretty like deep or just like wrapping up some things and stuff like that. So I definitely wanted to have some like more like lighthearted stories in there, but a lot of what I write is not very lighthearted. I can do like funny, like obviously like the Tabor stuff. There's a lot of fantasy shorts that are kind of humorous. But like when it comes to the main fantasy distractions, I constantly find myself writing like the darker side of it, I guess. So I had an idea to run some light-hearted type stories, but I kind of felt like I wasn't the one to write them at the time. So Derpy had offered to do it for me, so Derpy came in and wrote this one. And I really like the way it came out, so let's listen to that. And then we'll talk about it. I definitely got canceled in the sprinkle community, it's true. Get wrecked. I really don't like sprinkles, though. So I think I'm digging myself a deeper hole. Let's just watch this one before the Sprinkle community comes after me. All right.
Sir Kinnan, we've been having some unusual reports coming in as of late concerning some of our soldiers, especially your fellow knights. It says that their armor plates have been getting dislodged due to leather straps holding them together snapping.
I look up and away from my sword, at the man confronting me, a younger lad from what I know to be apprentice of Sir Velfris the Quartermaster. Realizing that I don't know his name, I promptly ask, "What's your name, young man?" The man looked almost confused before answering.
Well, my name is Truman.
Well, Truman, I have a hunch to why you came to report to me instead of Sir Velfris. I say promptly as I stand to deface Truman. I look at him waiting for a response. He craned his neck upwards a bit and took a while to respond. Afterwards, he quickly clears his throat.
Well, yes, it was also reported that these, wardrobe failures happened either during or after training sessions, with you specifically.
I smile at that, just as I suspected. Well, Truman, I don't know what else to say except the armor's just too flimsy to handle my mighty blows. Even when only using training equipment, my skill is just overwhelming. I boast a little too loudly, to be honest. Truman looked unimpressed, though. After a few moments of silence, he pointed with his quill at the top of my head. Immediately, I instinctively went to grab the little guy up there, as Truman remarked,
Are you sure it has nothing to do with that little shadow you've been harboring, Sir Kinnan?
"Sharp eyes you got there, Truman." I took an effort to not look flustered, but I've never been praised for my acting skills. Picking up the little shadow he mentioned and brought it down to eye level. Mint, I say with some hesitation. Though he isn't a shadow, he is a mirror mouse. He is... I begin to explain, as Mint quickly jumps out of my hands and vanishes completely. Quite shy, I finished, as Truman was not pleased in any sense of the imagination. From the looks of it, he managed to keep an eye on Mint a bit longer than I, but he seemed to lose him as well.
A mirror mouse.
His eyes darkened, almost as if all respect for me had faded from them.
Sir Kinnan, as a loyal knight of His Majesty, you surely aren't keeping a rodent as a pet, especially one who, if left unattended, may very well compromise our entire food stock.
Thinking quickly, I concocted a masterful response that would diffuse any and all frustration in Truman in seconds and restore my status as a knight in his eyes. Yes? Sadly, though, in truth, it only occurred to me after the fact. Truman just took a deep breath and turned away from me, making his way out of the armory.
I'm going to report this to Welfris. Hopefully he will see to this quickly.
"Wait, Truman!" I promptly addressed him, causing him to stop in his tracks and turn towards me, with a skeptical look in his eyes. I marched towards him until I was about 2 feet away. "I challenge you to a duel, Truman, assistant quartermaster and knight-to-be."
I couldn't. I mean...
"It would be a stain upon your honor, as well as Sir Velfris to refuse." I interrupted him. Truman was conflicted. "I know you're still a squire and barely knew his way around a sword. In truth, it's a great shame for me to even challenge a squire to a duel this way." Welfris left me no choice but to act. Truman steeled his resolve and accepted. He was always braver than most, though I distinctly recall him grumbling about it being ridiculous to challenge someone to a duel for a rodent. I was gracious enough to let it slide. He left to begin preparation for the duel himself. After a while, I left the armory as well, making my way back to the barracks where he would hold our duel. I felt a bit like a bully, a tyrant of sorts. This man was only doing what he was ordered to. but the man giving him said orders was a scheming bastard who was too nosy for his own good. Honestly, if he just used that brain of his to apply this subterfuge to the enemy instead of his allies, we would all be better off. To ponder these things, I eventually made my way back to the barracks. The walls were sturdy and the floor was covered in a dry earth. A few training dummies that we had were set aside and a few stools were set in their place. Truman was standing in the middle, awaiting me. I ignored him for now, but I scanned the room. The stools were already occupied by onlookers. But I had my eye out for a particular individual, one pretentious and conniving enough to orchestrate this turn of events. Eventually, I found him. Having found the culprit, I turned to Truman and make my way closer to him. You haven't told him, I presume? I asked quietly enough so no one could hear but him.
No, not yet. I assume that rodent is the reason for all of this.
Truman answered. He looked quite frustrated with me, and I wholly sympathize with him. Raising my voice, Very good then, let us begin. We both make our way to each side of the arena, Sir Valfris himself making his way to mark the beginning of the match. We both ready our swords. I made quick note of his attire. It hadn't changed from before. He was still wearing a leather tunic and trousers, with a light amount of padding in the front, with his chest covered by a slightly concealed set of chainmail and leather padding. Valfris unsheathed his sword and put it in the middle between both of us. Looking both ways, to make sure we were in position, he smiled before declaring the match begun, lifting his sword in the air and backing away. Truman was quick to charge. I hadn't fully expected this, so he managed to catch me off guard with a quick right swipe. I managed to block it, but at the cost of my footing. As I stumbled backwards, Truman wasted no time, keeping up the momentum he had built up and quickly lunged back at me. Just in time, I managed to catch myself and deflect the blow quickly, responding with a left swipe of my own. He catches it with his own sword and we lock together, pushing each other by the hilt of our swords. You're much better with the sword than I expected, I joyously quipped, almost forgetting the predicament that had led me to this situation.
You aren't the only one with secrets, Sir Kinnan.
Truman scowled back. As he does, he quickly bends down and swipes his leg under me, throwing me down on the floor, knocking the wind out of me. As he stood up and readied his blade, he added,
Setting rodents loose in the barracks to tamper with equipment?
He thrusted his blade down at me.
That's not very knightly of you, Sir Kinnan!
I managed to roll out of the way, planning on commenting how he was fighting. Wasn't very knightly either, but focusing on getting up, I quickly sit up and elbowed Truman in the back of the knee. Not very knightly either, but it was a free-for-all now. I threw him off balance, buying me enough time to stand up and face him.
This set isn't from the barracks, though, sir.
Truman commented with a smirk on his face. I would never do such a thing. I yelled back at him, charging at him. I attempt an upward slash. He handily pushes my blade to the side with his own, though getting thrown back a few inches. You not only question my integrity as a knight, but the validity of my skill as well. I continue following my strike. I quickly spin around, forcing him to attempt to block my strike again, pushing him even further back. I keep up these chain of attacks, even though I begin to feel my arms screaming at me to stop. I keep going until Truman is pinned against the wall, off of which a small shadow creeps down and onto Truman. My strength is not only my own. I fight for the good of this kingdom. I fight for the good of the ones I love. I was starting to monologue, and while doing so I attempted to keep the flurry of blows going, but Truman had enough, blocking my downward slash, kicking me in my gut, pushing me back.
You sure do like boasting, don't you, Sir Kinnan?
Truman spat at me.
But you need to be able to back it up!
Truman lunged forward, but as he did, the padding on his chest fell to the floor. That's why I got help, I say with a smirk, kicking Truman in his sternum, sending him groaning to the floor. I quickly walked up to him, pointing my sword at his throat. That was a good bout, Truman, but now it's over. As I pulled my sword back, I thrusted my hand towards him to help him up. Truman sighs, then took it, taking the opportunity to quickly make his way up my arm. Truman, seeing this, is surprised for a second before asking.
How did you train that thing?
I simply looked at him and said, I didn't. We're just good friends.
Alrighty. Yeah, so that's one of like the I had the idea for this one like so early on in like the outlining for fantasy distractions. I just moved it around so many times because like I didn't really want to be the one to write it, because like I said, it's like a little more lighthearted and stuff. So like okay, like they spar and stuff, but like he's got a pet mouse. He's a mirror mouse. Uh, he's got a pet mouse that like helps him win fights and stuff, and he's like messing with people's armor. So I never really knew where to place it. I moved it around in my outline so many times. Like I think it was supposed to be like one of the first like 20 to 25. Like it was supposed to be like number 24, I think. And then I moved it back to like 36, I want to say, and then eventually I moved it as like a filler if I didn't know what else to put in at the time. And then I ended up with, because I knew 48 and 9 were going to wrap up the Starlight Samurai and Maz stuff. And I knew 50 was going to be a teaser for the next season and the war. But 40 through like 47, I wasn't too sure. And then once I filled in those gaps, like 47 was the only one with like an opening. And I was like, you know what, let's try to do it. So I slapped it in there. Derpy wrote it. Him and Zaff recorded it, and there it is. But the next two that we're gonna listen to them back to back because it's actually like a two-parter. It's literally like a part 1 and a part 2. Janine does, I'm pretty sure it's just Janine for the first one, and then it goes into me and Janine for the second one. So this is going to be wrapping up the Starlight Samurai storyline for season 1. Like obviously we have a lot more Starlight Samurai stuff coming, but last we knew, as we went over in the last recap, I believe it was in the last recap stream from last week, last we knew Kai was on a planet called Oasis, where Maz, the bounty hunter from the very second fantasy distraction, Maz was setting a trap for him there. That was the last we knew. Yeah, what was the name of which fantasy distraction was the? We definitely talked about it in the last recap. Where did I squeeze that in? Which one was that, actually? Oh, yeah, there is a Maz one that was Fantasy Distraction 33. Okay. I was like, I know we talked about it on the last stream, but I don't remember. I forgot Maz has its own standalone. Yeah, so last we knew, he set the trap for Kai in Oasis, which was meant to just be like a planet for people to go on vacation and stuff. And Maz set a trap for the Starlight Samurai, who was sent there by the Galaxy Federation because they had heard of a disturbance, but it was just a trap for the Starlight Samurai. So we're going to let the next two play, and then we're going to talk about those, and then we'll do the last one, okay? I'm hoping it just I have it set up as a playlist, so it should just run from 48 into 49. If for some reason it does not, I will fix it. But yeah, listen to these, and then we'll talk about it.
This is Redbird, a silly, obvious, and much-needed codename. I can't use my real name for this, not anymore. The Galaxy Federation fired me after failing to hold my post. It was apparent how little they kept tabs on their employees when I returned home to find they didn't raid my place and remove their equipment. I quickly moved planets with their technology in my possession, as well as my old security key. The key helped me travel without anyone inspecting my luggage and finding the aforementioned tech. You're probably wondering why I'm even bothering filing this report if I got fired. This was my job for the Galaxy Federation, and I don't work for them anymore, so why go through the trouble? Well, after getting fired and moving, I thought about my time with the Federation. My one and only project while there was to track the cyborg Kai, the Starlight Samurai, as people in the galaxy call him. Now that I think about it, having a codename myself makes me feel closer to him than I ever did before. The Starlight Samurai and Redbird. Could have made a cool TV show if the circumstances were different. Last I knew, a man named Maz was hunting down the Starlight Samurai, and they were on a collision course for a planet called Oasis. It's a tropical vacation planet on the surface, but underneath there's a whole bunch of shady things going on. Maz set a trap for Kai, and that trap was sprung. The rest was radio silence. At least for me it was, since I got fired. I just couldn't let it go, though. How could I? This had become such a big part of my life. I had to know what was happening, or what happened. I needed that closure. Kai's story had become an obsession of mine, not just a job, and Maz held me at gunpoint once. So it was a bit personal, too. I set up the tech I had. This wasn't any ordinary tech. To be fair, I don't even know exactly how it works. This tech is next level. Only God knows where they found this stuff, and if we're being really honest, it's kind of creepy. These devices can pinpoint people's exact locations and give you live camera feed into what's happening no matter where it is. I think some of the cameras float and are invisible. Who set up all these cameras? I ask myself that question every day. Anyway, to clear things up, the Galaxy Federation fired me on a technicality. It wasn't my fault my outpost got wiped out by Maz, and it's not my fault I couldn't stop him either. He's an intergalactic bounty hunter, a threat that Kai should have been assigned to long ago. It was a mistake on the Federation's part, though, for sure. I was really good at my job. I calculated as much as I could, pinpointing direct coordinates of where the trap Maz set was on Oasis. I have a good memory, another reason they should have kept me. Unfortunately, this was days after that trap was sprung. It was likely the fight was over, and I would only find Maz's remains somewhere. But the fact Oasis was still standing gave me hope that the Starlight Samurai was still there. The final thing I reported to the Galaxy Federation was that Maz baited Kai into a large arena-like room that Maz and his henchmen set up for a showdown with the Starlight Samurai. As soon as I saw into the room leading to the arena, I remembered how personal the trap Maz set for Kai was. Images of his past missions, the more brutal ones I'm sure Kai wishes he could forget. Images of the rare times Kai gets to experience peace and quiet, and images of a woman named Adriana. The only one I thought could get through to Kai and maybe get him out of this mess. I moved my way through that room and got a visual on the arena. Kai was there all right. Bullet holes from Maz's men covered the floor of the makeshift arena, as did Maz's men. Bodies and limbs were strewn about all over the arena. The Starlight Samurai wasn't designed for pleasantries, that's for sure, and his self-defense program was unlike any we had ever seen in an android, let alone a cyborg. These bounty hunters did not stand a chance. I spent quite a while identifying the bodies that were identifiable, none of which matched Maz. Oddly enough, if I didn't know any better, there was no actual way to tell Kai was there either. They were clearly shooting at him, but it looked like no one had landed a single shot on him. I didn't see pieces of Kai's casing, oil, or blood anywhere. The only thing that I assumed Kai did there was create a huge hole in the arena, as if he sliced a whole building open with his katana so he could escape. Or maybe he was in pursuit of Maz. Either way, this opening confrontation could not have lasted long, and my search for answers continued further into Oasis. Since I was able to get to the exact location of the trap, I missed the fact that Kai and Maz's battle definitely bled out to the rest of Oasis. Places that once were prime vacation spots were completely empty, and arenas where they did battle was scattered about. I searched for a few minutes, unsuccessful in finding what I was looking for, and then I saw Maz. I was not expecting to find a bounty hunter before the Starlight Samurai. Maz stood on the roof of a building. He looked in good shape, despite the fighting, and in high spirits. A sick smile on his face as he smoked a cigar. He had this gun in one hand. Smoke was lingering from the barrel. Across from the building Maz was standing on were numerous downed buildings and a spacecraft. I assumed the people of Oasis were trying to escape what was happening on their planet. Just about everything was on fire, too. It was finally starting to look like the Starlight Samurai was in town, but where was Kai? Was he under the rubble? Did Maz's trick and traps extend to all of Oasis? Kai is fast. It must have been the perfect trap to catch him off guard. I searched the wreckage for Kai, but had no luck, so I tried to see what Maz would do next. As I turned my focus back to him, I saw his mouth open. The cigar barely hung on to his bottom lip. This reaction forced me back to the debris. I saw what Maz saw, a tear in the spacecraft where moments before it split in two. A beam of light shot forth, and a strong gust of wind pushed Maz's hair back as a blast just barely missed him. I zoomed in as much as I could zoom, and there he was, the Starlight Samurai battered and bloodied, ready to counterattack. This time, Maz was on the move, rushing through the tightest alleyways and through the largest buildings, desperately trying to get away. If that debris from before was dropped on the Starlight Samurai on purpose, it may have been Maz's last-ditch effort to stop Kai from getting to him, because now, everything felt like Maz was improvising. He rushed through one of the resorts, dashing around a pool and through a hotel. Everything was abandoned, so the residents must have known about this fight since it began. Maz rarely looked behind him to see if Kai was in pursuit, but one of the times he did, he ended up blindsided by the wall beside him crumbling. Through the rubble, Kai shot forward, his katana just grazing Maz's left arm as he tried to dodge. Instinctively, Maz leaned to his right and put his gun to Kai's chin, immediately pulling the trigger. Kai pulled his head back lightning fast to dodge the bullet and used his own momentum to strike Maz with his palm in Maz's chest. Maz rolled backwards and reached into one of his pockets. As he did, before Kai could get to him, he dropped a device that put up a blue force field between them, stretching as far as the walls and preventing Kai from getting through. Maz took a brief respite to catch his breath.
I gotta give it to you, Starlight Samurai. You're as tough as they say. I thought for sure that spaceship on your head would have been enough, but you're just full of surprises. As are you. Let's continue this fight later. You're wasting my time. You weren't the mission. No, you're not getting away that easy. I didn't do your job for you just to take a rain check. We're finishing this right here, right now.
Maz pulled another device out of his pocket and pressed a button. This created a second force field on the other side of Kai, and the two began to converge on him. Kai immediately ran straight at the closest wall that didn't have a barrier on it and ran right through with his shoulder. The moment he emerged on the other side, Maz was running beside him and taking shots with his gun. Kai put up his arm, and the casing on his forearm was enough to deflect the bullets that Maz was firing. Mid-run, Maz spun the barrel of his gun. That clearly changed the type of bullets he was firing, because the next one that hit Kai's forearm stuck to it. Maz stopped short, a smile on his face as Kai also stopped moving to face him. After a few seconds, the bullets on his arm exploded, knocking Kai back. As he lay on the ground, the area where the explosion happened lit up with electricity. It was the first time I ever heard Kai cry out in pain as he held his arm. Maz spun his gun again and began firing multiple bullets in Kai's direction. Kai, still dealing with the pain in his arm, simply covered his face with his other hand, but none of the bullets hit him directly. Instead, Maz outlined his body with the bullets.
You haven't felt pain in a long time, huh? I can tell. What's it like to be humbled by a lowly bounty hunter like me? I ain't even worthy to be on the Galaxy Federation's radar, even after destroying one of their outposts. Yet here I am, putting their dog on his knees. Get up. We ain't done yet. You took Ronka from me. That planet was mine.
Kai slowly got up. This was a day of firsts. I had never seen Kai caged like this before either. The Starlight Samurai went to move, but the bullets in the ground shot electricity up every time he tried to exit the outline Maz made.
Nothing to say for yourself? Any thoughts in that empty metal head of yours? You think you're special?
It dawned on me at this moment that Kai has been through so much since before I even started tracking him for the Galaxy Federation. I worked for the Federation for a long time, and Kai was a big part of my life, as I previously said, but he had been the Galaxy Federation's monster for much longer than that. I never saw Kai beaten and bloodied in this manner before. I've never seen him this hurt or in this much pain. I've never seen his life threatened to this degree. But who knows how many times this has happened to him? I can't say I condone what he's done or what he's doing, but there is a part of me that feels bad for him.
Every time the Galaxy Federation gives me a mission, I don't know what horrible thing they're going to want me to do next. I don't know what animal they want me to put down. I always tell myself, if they don't know I'm coming, this mission should be brief. And yet they always seem to know, or always have a plan ready in the event I show up on their doorstep.
I watched in horror as Kai put his hand into the electrical field mass setup, pieces of casing on his fingertips peeling away as the electricity ripped him apart. One by one, he began removing the bullets in the ground. Maz took a step back each time Kai dropped one to the ground.
I've never been proud of the result. Whole planets, gone. Whole civilizations, destroyed. For me, it's nothing but painful memories until the Galaxy Federation tries to remove them from my head. Despite their efforts, so many of them linger. Maz, you can stun me temporarily. You can lock me in a cage. But the most consistent memory I have is that those planets, those civilizations, those people are dead. And I'm not.
The next attack was instant, so fast that if I wasn't so enthralled with what I was seeing, I would have missed it. The slash from Kai's katana caught Maz in the chest, and his blood sprayed on the ground as Kai followed through with his katana. Kai went for a follow-up attack, but Maz still had one last surprise for the Starlight Samurai. Yet another device Maz pulled out from seemingly nowhere with a simple press of a button. I lost visual. It must have been a close-range flashbang of some sort, blinding everything within a certain radius. I quickly switched to a nearby view to see Maz boarding a ship. In a distance, I saw massive explosions all over Oasis, potentially another planet destroyed in Kai's wake. There was no driver in the ship, but it was rising in the air as Maz appeared on top of it. He began shouting down to Kai.
A fitting end for the Starlight Samurai, don't you think?
Kai put his katana to the side and gripped it tightly with both hands. He bent his legs and launched himself upwards out of sight from Maz, but still in my view. He tore straight through the bottom of the ship, slicing the ship's engine as he pushed through to the other side. He popped out and landed on the top of the ship. Both Kai and Maz struggled to keep their footing as they plummeted to the ground. After the crash, Maz was laying on the edge of the ship, blood dripping off the edge from the wound Kai gave him earlier. Kai was face first on the ship, his injured fingers dug into the ship to keep him from falling off. Kai made it to his feet first, limping as he walked over to Maz. He grabbed the bounty hunter by his shirt and pulled him up. He placed the tip of his katana on Maz's forehead. A trickle of blood ran down to his nose.
Do it. Put me out of my misery. I have nothing left. I'm not the demon you want me to be. Like I said, you weren't the mission.
Kai tightened his grip on the handle of his katana. I wasn't sure when the last time I experienced anything this intense. I thought about looking away before Kai could deliver the finishing blow. I did not take joy in watching this, but to my surprise, Kai let go of his grip on Maz and let him fall back onto the ship. He put down his katana and began walking away from Maz. At this moment, I guess the Galaxy Federation finally realized someone else was watching the feed and they cut me off. Since I am treating this as my final report, I will say this in closing. Kai isn't a monster, a beast, or a demon. He isn't evil, and he isn't taking pride in what he's doing to these people or planets. After seeing him on his rare days off, I'm not surprised he spared Maz. The Galaxy Federation points their finger to a place on the map of the universe with a mission in mind, and Kai's just their tool to carry it out. Sure, the blood is on his hands, but the true enemy of us all is the Federation itself. I pray that one day someone severs the chains that bind the Starlight Samurai to the Galaxy Federation, and maybe he can save us from the real monsters that made him what he is.
Are you just going to...
Okay, that was a lot, but actually not that bad. The like lengthwise, the The first one with just Janine is like not even 7 minutes. I didn't even realize, and then the second one is like not even 9 or 10. But yeah, I really, really like the way that came out. I don't know if I ever ran ads on those. I feel like if I haven't, I should. I would like those to be seen by more people. I'll be able to tell if I ran ads on them or not. One second. No, I definitely did not. But man, I really do like the way that came out. I'm really proud of that one. I never intended to play both Kai and Maz. I knew I had to play Maz at that point because of the voice and stuff, but I wanted somebody else to play Kai for that one, so it wasn't me basically talking to myself in their interactions. But excuse me, the person we originally had to play, who was going to play Kai for that one, did not end up ever starting to do any of the project with us, so it ended up just being me. But hopefully it didn't ruin like the story that I was essentially playing both Kai and Maz, but Janine did Janine is amazing in it. I remember she told me that like she filmed it like early in the morning, like when she just woke up, so her voice had that like kind of like groggy kind of feel to it. But I think it came out really, really good, and I'm really happy with it. The whole like premise of the Starlight Samurai is kind of like Vash the Stampede from Trigun, kind of, sort of. Not exactly, obviously, but that's kind of like the feel I was going for, where it's like Vash has this bounty on his head, and whenever people go to try to like kill him to claim the bounty, like he ends up leaving places destroyed, and he gets this really bad like reputation. And even like the fact that he has the bounty on his head. I don't know if they changed it in the new one. I still need to watch the new one. But like even just him having the bounty on his head, like, is from stuff that like wasn't necessarily his fault. It's like kind of his fault, but kind of not his fault. And that's like kind of the Starlight Samurai's whole thing. It's like the Galaxy Federation, points to somewhere on the map, like Janine's character said there, and he goes and he completes whatever task they want him to complete. And a lot of the times it's a mission that should be simple, but it ends up being like really messy, and bad things happen, and entire planets get destroyed and stuff. So he builds up this like really bad reputation, and people are scared of him, but he's actually like not that bad of a person when he's able to just be free in himself and enjoy his days off and stuff. So this character Redbird in this one that is tracking him all this time, like she realizes that because she's been keeping tabs on him for a while. So she knows that like, okay, like when he's not being forced to do these things, he's not that bad of a dude, and then it's like he gets forced to do these horrible things, and he's basically like programmed to do them. So he gets the bad rep when it's really the Galaxy Federation that people should be looking at. And then like the whole like Maz and Starlight Samurai thing is, interesting, because Maz is like, he is a pretty bad dude. He's a bounty hunter, and he's doing all these horrible things, and even he's almost like offended that the Galaxy Federation didn't put the bounty on his head, or like send Kai after him, or that they don't even like talk about him. Like he's kind of mad, like, wait, I'm here like besting their dog, that they send out to do their dirty work, and they're not even looking and might like they don't even know I exist. Like, you know, they're giving him the Thanos like I don't even know who you are treatment. Like, he doesn't like that. Obviously, he's like offended as this like supposedly big deal bounty hunter, you know, and it's like hurting his pride and his reputation a little bit. So he takes it personal, and then on top of that, it's like he was kind of the top dog on Ronka, which was the planet that they fight on in Fantasy Distraction number 2, and Kai comes through and like destroys that planet. So Maz is like, these were my stomping grounds, and now this guy kind of ruined that. So he's got this like personal grudge against Kai as well. So they get to settle their differences. But I did release a short, not a short, a just kind of like a one-off called Maz Final Resting Place. That is kind of the continuation of the story. So if you want to see a little bit more of this, go check out that story. That story is just narrated by me. I wasn't really they were just like stories I was releasing kind of on my own without the other voice actors while I was figuring out what to do with season 2. So it most likely would have had Janine on it if I wasn't doing it that way. But it does continue this a little bit. It kind of wraps this up a little bit more than it's already wrapped up. The other thing I really like that I wanted to talk about was I heavily like, because he's so like Trigun, Vanish the Stampede inspired. There used to be these episode previews at the end of and they still do them, like coming attractions kind of, for like the next episode for Trigun. And the Trigun ones, like the original, again, I haven't watched the new one yet, so I don't know if they do this still in the new one. But the original had like really, really good ones where like Johnny Young Bosch as Vash would just like do these kind of like somber like narrations previewing the next episode. And a lot of the Kai stuff, like when we get to the Kai short, it should be fantasy short number 2, I think. A lot of like when Kai speaks, like that's what I'm going for. I'm not Johnny Young Bosch, obviously. I can't execute it quite as well as he does, or in the exact way that I wanted to do it. But plus it's like longer form, you know, like a preview for an anime episode is like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it is. And this was like, you know, the fantasy short is probably at least like 3 to 4 minutes long. So it's a little harder to do that like for a longer period of time, but that's like kind of always what I'm going for when I try to read for Kai, is that kind of like somber, like, you know, because he's so like detached and kind of like a little emotionless because he's like a cyborg who's getting his memories like altered every time he goes back to the Galaxy Federation. So yeah, he that's what I'm going for when I try to do his voice and his readings. And if you haven't listened to those, I'm 100% sure they have a compilation of just those little previews with Vash talking, because that's what I listen to like on repeat to try to get mentally ready to do that, and I still failed horribly, but I tried my best. Yo, what's up, Jake? You're back? Or you're back just in time for number 50, which is our big finale, which you know obviously, but so if you wanted to hear you and Mike scream for the 10 millionth time, you made it back just in time for that. But yeah, let's watch the finale. We're gonna talk about that, and then we'll wrap it up. Man, the Maz and Kai stuff though, like I'm actually really, really proud of those. I might actually try to see if I can share those around and maybe run some ads on them. I can't believe I never ran ads on those two. They're so good. Janine is amazing in those. Like I wish I did a little better, you know, but I tried my best on that too. It was hard doing 2 characters with as little experience as I have in voice acting. So I wish I would have done better. I'm definitely not that great at it. But those two I really, really like. I would like to do more stuff like that with Kai in the future, maybe. Putting the 50 together was fun. That's true. Jake did put together 50 for us. There's some background sound effects and stuff. We really went for a different style for this because we thought we were doing season 2 in this format. So we kind of wanted to like preview it. But I'm still happy we did 50 this way because I think it's the perfect way to do it. So it was a really good finale, and I'm really proud of it and happy with it. And you did a great job putting it together. I'm happy you mentioned that because it needs to be mentioned in this recap video. And I'm afraid I would have forgot. But all right, let's listen to 50 and then we'll talk about it.
Are you just going to stand there like that? I know how much you like your stories. Why else would you be here? I am the Great Imuna, a wise seer seated in the sky above. Dramatic enough for you? Here in the center of this very room, I have before you a floating circle filled with water. No, it's not a bucket, or a cauldron, or something cliché like that. No, I can put my hand under it, and I can put my hand over it. But if you come a little closer, you can see it's not just ordinary water floating in front of me. You can only see yourself. Well, that isn't the desired effect we're going for here. But it is important to understand the impact a reflection can have on us. You can look into your own eyes. Sometimes you see scars, maybe some wrinkles. You can see the person you have become, and perhaps be proud of yourself. Or you can see the monster within. Take a closer look. What do you see now?
Hey, you awake yet? I'm getting bored. Whoa, easy. There's a reason you're chained up and I'm not, you wild animal.
Where's Anna? What happened to her?
They did say that you were traveling with some girl. She's long gone now. On the other part of Fenrir, I'd imagine. King Ingvar left her for Lord Kazai to recruit. To be fair, I still don't know how I feel about what you did back there. Taking on all those Obsidian Knights by yourself, then standing up to the God King? Not sure I even want to be in the same carriage as you. I hope that stupidity isn't contagious.
You don't understand. That girl needs my protection.
If you consider her like family, then I understand more than you know. Unfortunately, you can't get to Anna. Not now, anyway. My two little girls are about to spend a long time without their father. Seeing as we were being escorted from Vorpal, it might be a while we're stuck in this carriage. I bet those scars come with a lot of stories.
Many stories indeed. Isn't it strange how the worst case scenarios sometimes give birth to the oddest of allies? Jack has sworn to protect Anna until his last breath. But the Obsidian and Onyx war has torn the two apart. In the process, Obsidian now has Jack and Ren, while Onyx has Anna and Desiree. Can the barmaid keep little Anna's secret from Lord Kazai? If that secret gets out, it could mean the end for Obsidian. Assuming sweet little Anna packs the same punch as her mother.
Again! No one here eats or sleeps until this move is perfected by every single one of you. Each swing must possess the essence of your soul. Strike, and strike again, 1,000 times if you must, until your blade rings true.
One trains warriors, the other trains her own spirit.
I have made peace with the fact that this battle may be my last. Ingvar and his brutes stand between Lord Kazai and his destiny. Kazai has trusted me since before he was our lord. I will not disappoint him. I will cut down every obsidian knight that breaks through that door, and leave a trail of bodies in Lord Kazai's name as I face this tyrant. We will bring honor back to Fenrir!
Sometimes it can be difficult for people to see you for what you really are on the inside, especially when your exterior doesn't meet their standards.
Orcs are often considered monsters by Fenins. Lord Kazai was under a lot of scrutiny when he seeked me out for recruitment. Fenins are misguided. Orcs are only different in appearance, and the fact that we typically live much longer lives. There are good orcs. There are bad orcs. A single orc does not define the race. Therefore, I do not hold Fenins responsible for Grex's actions. That man's actions are more monstrous than mine will ever be. The world is much better off without him.
Any sane person would consider Lord Kazai the hero and King Ingvar the villain in this war. But they both do have their faults. Many on Fenrir would stand against both if given the chance. I have no doubt about that. Let's not discredit the fact that there are so many more elements at play here. Obsidian and Onyx will go to war, but will the result be so clear? Will these seemingly invisible godlike referees intervene again?
Be honest. Do you even care who wins?
I wouldn't even know they were fighting if you didn't tell me. Of course, I don't care.
Now might be a good time to start.
Sometimes I wonder if it's the tailor calling the shots instead of the God King.
Need I remind you, the blood of the people of Reddick is on your hands.
You will never understand, Dita. I had to do what I did. There was no other option.
Do you think your king would find that to be an acceptable excuse?
Fleeing Triton was a mistake, and the most innocent pay the price.
I never thought you would agree to this.
You do not know the lengths I am willing to go through to save this kingdom. I see you've prepared both girls.
Why waste time? We run the experiment on them both and keep whichever one lives.
Sadly, not everything would be avoided if King Ingvar and Lord Kazai were to lay down their arms. But perhaps some of Fenrir would be spared. The last time those two rivals did battle was on top of Mount Sha'ire. The world shook, and Fenins everywhere trembled. Will their next meeting have the same disastrous effects? Will Fenrir survive?
I'm impressed you have the guts to face me again after what happened last time.
Fighting against you was never a problem for me. But now that I am a lord, the safety of my own people is a priority. Forgive me for having to set the stage. I had to make this fight on my own terms.
Whose terms it is doesn't matter. The outcome is going to be the same. I'm not letting you slip away this time.
The honorable samurai of Undin and the God King walk slowly around each other. Both unsheath their katanas. Rednefed versus Cold Knight. The blade that blocks any attack versus the blade that cuts through anything. Their weapons' stories rival the legendary tales of the men who wield them. One shines with the light of the moon. The other reflects the starlight. They clash.
Here we go again, you tyrant. Why can't you just see that I'm more fit to lead Fenrir?
More fit? Are you not embarrassed? You're supposed to be the smart one here, and I'm always one step ahead of you.
That's the problem, Ingvar. It's always me versus you. You don't care what happens to this planet. You have no morals.
I'll never understand it. I'll never understand how you and your people can underestimate me. The people of Obsidian are convinced I am a god, and your people are afraid they might be right. You think you're the only one capable of leading Fenrir into the future, but you're wrong. You're all wrong! I am the only one powerful enough to do what Fenrir needs most.
You're mistaken about your beliefs, Ingvar. You always have been. Morska, Jakari, Anror, hell, even Aradia put rules in place to help Fenrir grow. The one that made them put them here for a reason. We both know that more than most. You cannot sever what remains of those deities. Some Fenins cling to that. Some Fenins believe that it is all they have. You cannot take that away from them.
The gods and goddesses vanished. All they left behind were constraints on a planet that yearns for freedom. If you're not willing to do what needs to be done, then I will. I won't hold Fenrir back any longer. Neither should you or anyone else. I will free it. I will do what's necessary.
Oh my! Now this is getting exciting, isn't it? Then I'm afraid that's all the teasing we can do for today. You'll have to come back next time to see how all of this and much, much more plays out. Oh, if only I could let you put a permanent thumbs up or, I don't know, allow for some other notification when things get lively. Oh, either way, I hope to see you again. Run along now. Ta-ta.
The whole thing is amazing. It's definitely one of my like most proud things we've done on the channel so far. I totally forgot that I had Innocent basically tell people to like thumbs up, like, and subscribe at the end in like fantasy distractions terms, which is pretty funny. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky now because when we put that together, I did it with the intention of taking the scenes that were already written and performed for this and incorporating them into like the audio play format for the second season. But now that we're not doing that format anymore, I almost feel like when the scenes happen in the actual story, because it's all like teaser setup for scenes that are gonna actually happen, obviously, it's not gonna like hit as hard, but it's alright. It is what it is. I still like, there's still scenes that need to happen and that were set up for a reason, so they're still gonna happen. They just won't be performed this way, I guess. But overall, like, definitely a really strong finale for us, I think, and I'm really happy with the way it came out. There are a couple of things that, like, I kind of wish I could go back and do a little differently as far as this finale goes, only for the fact that I don't know how I did not give Sasselia any lines. I don't know why I did that, especially because I set up, let me see if I can open the actual file, the written version of it real quick. I literally like set up a spot where there should have been an Anna scene, like an Anna and Desiree scene, like right at the beginning, and then it just cuts to Seldrick for some reason. Like, Sasselia is a very big part of everything we did in the first season, and if I could go back, I definitely would have given her some lines in this. I don't know how I did not. And I didn't like realize until like after we released it, and I felt really bad. Yeah, Muna says, many stories indeed. Isn't it strange how the worst case scenarios sometimes give birth to the oddest of allies? Jack has sworn to protect Anna until his last breath, but the Obsidian and Onyx War has torn the two apart. In the process, Obsidian now has Jack and Ren, while Onyx has Anna and Desiree. Can the barmaid keep little Anna's secret from Lord Kazai? If that secret gets out, it could mean the end for Obsidian, assuming sweet little Anna packs the same punch as her mother. And then I just went into Seldrick for some reason. I mean, I still wanted Seldrick to have a scene so that Derpy had some lines, but I could have definitely, like, I don't know if maybe I intended to, and like, because I think I wrote this in parts. Like, I wrote it and then I like did some other stuff and then I wrote some more. It's like I could have easily just put it in like a Anna and Desiree scene to give Sasselia some lines. I don't know why I didn't, and I didn't realize till after. Like, I still gave her like a shout out in the description, but Sasselia deserved better. I know she doesn't mind nearly as much as I do, but I should have included her in there somewhere. The other thing that's going to be different is Sade is played by Peepo, who's done a lot of stories for us since this season ended. Like she did the Morska t-shirt story and stuff like that, and she's just like really busy and unable to contribute to the second season now. So Sade is going to be played by somebody else whenever she has lines. We haven't quite pinpointed who is going to replace her yet, but I have an idea. It's more so a matter of if they can do it in the time that I need it. We might have to have somebody else play, because she has lines in the second one that's coming out. So that's like the week after May 19th, whatever date that is. I can't think off the top of my head. She has lines in that one, so I'm hoping the person that I want to play Sade can voice her in that one. If not, maybe we'll have one of the other girls voice her just for that episode, and then any other Sade lines after that will be the person I have in mind to replace her. But yeah, it would have been cool if we could have had Peepo for the second season, but it doesn't seem like we're going to. Maybe sometime in the future we can bring her back, but right now it's not in the cards. But definitely go follow Peepo on YouTube. She does a lot of horror-based gaming content, so if that's your sort of thing, definitely go check her out. But yeah, so Sade will be different, or sound different at least. I should have gave Sasselia more lines in this. Everything else was really, really good. Any of the stuff between Jake and Mike, obviously playing Ingvar and Kazai, incredible. Innocent absolutely killed it as Muna, of course. And yeah, I'm hoping we can deliver on a lot of these things we set up for season 2, and I hope that season 2 comes out good enough, and hopefully people enjoy it. Hopefully I can get more eyes on the channel. Before we wrap up the stream, I guess. Ren versus Jack are Gwen. Jack's like protecting Ren. They're homies. They're not gonna fight each other. Unless maybe Aradia like possesses Jack and then they don't have a choice, but yeah, so I would like to end the final recap stream of season 1. I'm definitely going to do a fantasy shorts recap stream where I'm going to try to recap all 25 of them in one stream. Ren and Jack cooking by the book, Lazy Town cover when that we can do. That's up to you and Mike. I'll write it if you guys want to perform it. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to try to do a fantasy short stream where we'll probably recap all 25 in one sitting. I would like to do something like that, because a lot of them are like one-off, kind of quirky, weird stories compared. Some of them are serious, but a lot of them are weird. So that's something I think we could do in one sitting. And just kind of fire through them real quick, comment on them a little bit, and move on. So maybe next Friday we'll do that. Monday, I'm probably gonna do a writing stream. Possibly doing like that choose your own adventure thing I was planning to do, but I'm not 100% sure yet. We might just do some writing for season 2. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with that stream yet, but I definitely want to start doing writing streams on both Monday and Friday. So like we start and end the week with some writing stuff, and then we just game in between or whatever. The other thing I want to mention is you could always come talk to me live on twitch.tv/Val_Starlight. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave some comments on videos because Lord knows we need some help with the algorithm. Like, comment, all that fun stuff. And that is pretty much it. I'm really happy with how season 1 came out. There were some struggles throughout, like getting stuff released on time at times, but we somehow pulled it off. It wasn't actually 50 weeks straight, it was more like 48 weeks straight because the first 2 fantasy distractions came out. Like the very first fantasy distraction came out about 12 months before the third one. The second fantasy distraction came out about 3 months before 6 months before the first one. Because what happened was I was trying to get special art made for every single episode, and then I abandoned that idea. So because we were trying to get the art made and everything, the episodes took really, really long to release. So because they took so long to release, the third one actually didn't come out until like 12 months after the first one. So it's almost like a year between the first and the third one. And then it was either maybe it was 3 months each. So maybe it was only 6 months before, but either way, the first 2 did not release during that 50 weeks. It's actually 48 weeks. But it was still a lot of short stories over the span of 50 weeks because if you include the 25 shorts in there, it's a lot. But yeah, hopefully season 2 is just as good. I'm planning to do something similar with season 2. It's just that the dates, like the release dates, will be different. So we used to release Fantasy Distractions season 1 episodes on Mondays, and then Fantasy Shorts were on Wednesdays. The new season is premiering on a Friday. So Friday will be the new main fantasy distraction day, and then I think halfway through the season we're going to do another 25 episode season of fantasy shorts. That day will either be Monday to coincide with how we're doing the streams, or fantasy shorts will still come out on Wednesdays, but I just have to get like the timing down because I like fantasy shorts to end before the main fantasy distraction season ends. So we might actually start on like the 24th week of Fantasy Distractions, so that when we hit week 50 of season 2, Fantasy Shorts will already be over, and we'll just be wrapping up the second season. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching these. They get like a decent amount of views for some reason, like after the stream is over. So hopefully, if you're seeing this in the future, thank you. Please subscribe. We definitely need subscribers. Over the course of the last 28 days, we've lost 4 subscribers. And I try not to take too much stock into numbers, but it does kind of play tricks with my psyche. So in the interest of my mental health, please subscribe to the channel. And if you're already subscribed, don't unsubscribe for whatever reason. I would appreciate it. I'm just trying to get monetized so that maybe we can make some money off this thing. But thank you guys for watching, and I think that's pretty much it for me. Jake, if you're still watching, thank you for hanging out. Anybody else that's still lurking in chat, I appreciate the lurks. And that's it for me. And hope to see you guys for season 2 of Fantasy Distractions. May 19th, 2023 is when it premieres. and I'm working on the stories for it now, so hopefully they're ready to go in about a month from now. So next Friday, Fantasy Shorts recap stream. Monday, possibly a writing stream. And if you want to just hang out and talk writing or video games or whatever, twitch.tv/Val_Starlight. And that's it. Bye.